Chapter 1. Gentle Control was an urban BL novel. It was labeled as sadistic love, seductive, insane, and tragic. It was reasonable to say that a straight man like Song Yu would never read this novel in his life. It was all because there was a supporting character in the novel who had the same name as him. Because of this reason, his cousin sneakily recommended this book to him. "Brother, there is a person in the book who has the same name as you. Do you want to try to open the door to a new world?" Song Yu happened to be sick and hospitalized. He raised his eyebrows and began to read the novel. The plot of Gentle Control was divided into two parts. The first part was in high school. At this time, the protagonist was a poor little boy. The protagonist's mother was ignorant. When she was young, she was coaxed into bed by the scumbag Third Master Xie and became his mistress. When Third Master Xie's wife found out, she was so jealous that she disfigured the protagonist's mother and drove her out of a city. The protagonist's mother refused to accept the reality. On the seventh night in the new city, she jumped off a building and committed suicide in front of the 3-year-old protagonist. It was conceivable that this left a psychological shadow on Xie Sui. It was an old lady on the opposite side of the building. She had no children and took pity on him, so she adopted him. Ever since he was young, Xie Sui had lived in an environment filled with malice. He was bullied by the naughty kids in the same building and was pointed at behind his back by the women on the street. They used the most malicious guesses to speculate about his mother, saying that his mother jumped to her death because she went out to prostitute herself and caught a disease. Old buildings, narrow alleys, potholed vegetable markets, and all kinds of unpleasant rumors were his distorted childhood. These experiences caused Xie Sui to feel inferior and vulnerable. It also foreshadowed that he would fall in love with the scumbag because of a little warmth. The story began when Xie Sui was in high school. Xie Sui was admitted to the top class of Jing City First High School because he was the top student in the city. There were two kinds of students in the top class. One was the top student in grades, and the other was the student with a very good family background. If Xie Sui only belonged to the former category, it would be fine. The key point was that he had inherited his mother's beauty. He had a cold temperament and an outstanding appearance. As soon as he entered the school, he attracted the attention of a perverted rich second-generation heir in his class. Every day, the rich second generation would harass him in class. He would always say some malicious words, and the people around him would kick up a fuss. The teacher kept his eyes open and closed. Xie Sui remained silent and pretended not to hear anything. That was until the rich second generation became even worse. Once, when he mentioned his mother, Xie Sui said, "You look like a vixen. Don't tell me your mother is a prostitute." Xie Sui felt as if someone had touched her bottom line. Her eyes were red with anger, and she almost beat him to death that day. Because of this incident, the rich second generation flew into a rage out of humiliation and bore a grudge against him. At this time, Gong Yi appeared. Gong Yi was the cousin of a rich second generation. He was a rich playboy in the capital. He came to the number 1 middle school in Jing City just to hide from his father. He fell in love with Xie Sui at first sight. He felt that Xie Sui's cold temperament was special and attractive, so he began to flirt with him. He pretended to be gentle and indulged his cousin's evil deeds. Then, he took the opportunity to become a savior and win Xie Sui's favor. Xie Sui had been treated with coldness and malice since he was a child. It was the first time that someone protected and respected him like this. Gradually, he was confused and moved. He didn't even know if he liked Gong Yi. He was very obedient. However, Gong Yi's image as a playboy didn't change. Once the cold beauty fell in love with Gong Yi, it would be boring. When he got tired of Gong Yi and was about to leave Sea City, he glanced at his cousin and smiled. "Like him? Then I'll give him to you." Seeing this, Song Yu's expression froze, and 3 question marks slowly appeared in his mind. Therefore, when Xie Sui graduated from high school, Gong Yi tricked him into going to the rich second generation's apartment. He drugged him and almost raped him. Song Yu was speechless. He suddenly felt very thirsty and wanted to drink a glass of water. Fortunately, Xie Sui didn't care about his life. When he was ruthless, no one could stop him. He knocked the rich second generation unconscious with a wine bottle and escaped. When he got home, he received bad news. His grandmother saw that he didn't come back so late and went out to look for him. She was hit by a car and was paralyzed. This was the last straw that broke Xieshui's back. At that moment, the 17-year-old boy felt as if he had fallen into an abyss. His grandmother didn't die, but the medical expenses were astronomical. Therefore, after Xieshui went to college, he started to work part-time day and night. This included working in the clubhouse, where he was insulted and molested. He met Gong Yi. Gong Yi was a CEO. When he saw Xieshui, he was stunned because Xieshui looked like the white moonlight in his heart. Song Yu, who was so angry that smoke rose from his throat, poured himself another glass of water. What kind of fucking idiots are they? If they're sick, they'll treat them. If they're not sick, they'll get sick. In the end, he jumped over in a hurry because Gong Yi's strategy was similar to Gong Yi's. Anyway, overall, Xieshui was miserable. After another round of physical and mental torture, Song Yu poured herself 2 cups of water during this time. The plot started to get better. Xieshui returned to the Xie family. It turned out that third young master Xie loved Xieshui's mother deeply from the beginning. He felt so guilty about it that he even gave the whole Xie family to him to make up for it. At this time, Xieshui completely cut off her love, gave up on that group of scumbags, and went abroad. After 3 years, she became the real pride of the Xie family and the head of the Xie family. She had a noble temperament, an outstanding appearance, and a cold and distant aura. She was the new noble in the capital that all the socialites flocked to. At this time, Gong Yi and Gong Yi began to regret. Gong Yi and Gong Yi appeared and started to cause trouble again. These 3 big shots, who were standing at the top of the financial circle, were filled with regret when faced with Xieshui's cold disregard. After going crazy, they came up with a unified plan. They had to get him even if they had to destroy him. Therefore, they joined forces to destroy the Xie family, imprison Xieshui, and started to force love. The topic was, snatch by force. The comment section had already gone crazy. Woo woo, it's finally here. Like to bully big beauties. Little dark room, little dark room. Idiot. Song Yu drank the last glass of water and threw the squeezed plastic cup into the trash can. He exited the novel page and clicked on the chat page with his cousin. Brother Song is handsome, you're finished. Your summer vacation is gone. Song Lan replied instantly. Lan Lan doesn't like you. Lan Lan doesn't like you, what's wrong? Brother, you can play and make trouble, but don't joke about your summer vacation. Woo woo. Song Yu sneered. Brother Song is handsome, don't cry, sister. I really don't buy it. Brother Song is handsome, I've finished reading Gentle Control. Little Song Lan, I think your thoughts are very dangerous. I urgently need a set of 5-3 to wake you up. I'll tell your mother. Good luck during your summer vacation. Lan Lan doesn't like you, black question. JPG, Lan Lan doesn't like you, don't. Good brother. So what did I do wrong again? Lan Lan doesn't like you, I just read a crispy duck in clear water. Lan Lan doesn't like you, you didn't donate blood, kidney, or uterus. What right do you have to say that my political thoughts are incorrect? Woo woo, I think I'm worse than Xieshui. Brother Song is handsome, donate blood, kidney, or uterus. Brother Song is handsome, very good. This summer vacation, I'll go to your house and tutor you. I'll let you have a taste of your cousin's hot love in the summer. Song Lan broke down. A line of words came over. He could feel her anger through the screen. Lan Lan doesn't like you, Jiyu Beiyu. You're so cruel. Brother Song is Jiyu Beiyu. Who is Jiyu Beiyu? Lan Lan doesn't like you. It's you, no. It's your future husband. Song Yu, who had a husband out of nowhere, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Little girl, you're rebelling. Brother Song is handsome, read less online novels when you're young. Do more math problems. I've also arranged for Tianli 38 sets, Song Lan. Damn it, why? Song Yu smiled and closed the chat page. He would be in his 3rd year of high school next semester. This girl was still so worrisome. He went to the toilet and fell asleep as soon as he came back. Before he went to sleep, He recalled the plot of the book in his mind. He shook his head and sneered. The person who Song Lan said had the same name as him in the book was actually a canon Fodder who appeared in less than 2 chapters. He was childhood sweetheart with the protagonist before he was 6 years old. Later, he went abroad to recuperate. His only role was to tell the protagonist some things in the past when they met abroad. He said, "Your mother loves you very much. Don't hate her." He wanted Xie Sui to let go of the past. He thought that this was just a small episode in his recuperation life. He never thought that when he woke up the next day, he would transmigrate into the book and become Song Yu, who appeared in less than 3 chapters and died early from illness. Chapter 2. He stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Song Yu took out his mobile phone and searched for a lot of information. Finally, he confirmed that he had transmigrated. He transmigrated into the stupid book Gentle Control and became the canon Fodder with the same name. The third young master of the Song family in a city, Song Yu. Throwing his mobile phone aside, Song Yu grabbed his hair irritably. He turned his head and saw a young man's face reflected in the glass window. His skin was pale and his hair was soft. His facial features were particularly delicate. His eyes were big and clear. In the blue and white hospital gown, he looked sickly and pitiful. This face was exactly the same as when he was 15 years old. Fuck. Brother Song was going to be autistic. As a supporting character with few appearances in Gentle Control, Song Yu's illness was not worthy of the author's description at all. So he transmigrated into the book. Song Yu asked everyone around him, including the doctors, nurses, and nannies, but no one could tell him the name of his illness. They all looked at him sadly with tears in their eyes. Even his mother, the strong woman of the Song group who had always been swift and decisive, had tears in her eyes when she heard his question. She reluctantly squeezed out a gentle smile and did not answer his question. "Yu, be good. When you get out of the hospital, Mom will accompany you wherever you want to go." Song Yu finally understood. The author of the original book didn't want him to live at all. Don't ask. If you asked, it would be a terminal illness that touched the blind spot of contemporary medical knowledge. Anyway, he could just wait for death. The black car slowly drove into a villa on the outskirts of a city. This was the house that Song Yu's parents specially bought for him to recuperate. It was close to the mountains and rivers. The scenery was elegant and the environment was quiet. Song Yu got out of the car slowly. His delicate and pale face was full of weariness. Mother Song looked at him with fear. She was afraid that her precious son would commit suicide if she was not careful. In the villa, the nanny had already prepared dinner. Father Song and Brother Song were in the company and couldn't leave tonight. Only Mother Song was eating with him. Mother Song looked at Song Yu worriedly and put food in his bowl. "You've been discharged from the hospital. Why do you look so sad? Don't you like Auntie Wang's dishes the most?" Song Yu had no appetite and didn't want to talk. Mrs. Song suppressed the bitterness in her heart and maintained her smile as she said, "When you return to a city this time, I've organized a welcome banquet for you at home. Anyway, you're going to study in a city's high school. Why don't you take this opportunity to get to know more people your age? What does Yu think?" The Song family was considered a first-class wealthy family in a city. Any banquet held by them would be reported by the media. The fact that Song Yu came back in such a high-profile manner was enough to show how much the Song family doted on him. It was just that, he had to get to know more people of the same age. If he remembered correctly, the 2 scumbags were in a city as well. They could be considered as people of the same age, and they were in the same circle. Song Yu's fingers paused for a long time. A faint mechanical voice suddenly appeared in his mind. Beep. System activating. Song Yu's pupils shrank and he suddenly looked up. "Mom, I'm going back to my room to rest." Mrs. Song was stunned as she watched her son leave the table and run upstairs. Song Yu went back to the room, closed the door, and drew the curtains. He turned around and silently looked at the pale and ethereal soul standing in front of him. He frowned. "Are you the one who dragged me to this world?" Standing in front of him was Song Yu of this world. Song Yu was wearing a hospital gown. His face was so pale that it was almost transparent. His eyes were harmless and gentle like a little sheep. After hesitating for a long time, he nodded slowly. Yes, it's me. Why? Song Yu's pale face turned even paler. He said weakly, I'm sorry. There's a malfunction in our main world, so we have to pull you here for remedial measures. I'm Song Yu of this world, but you can also call me System 008. Originally, the value of Song Yu's existence was to chat with the protagonist 5 years later and enlighten the protagonist. But for some reason, Song Yu couldn't hold on and died in the ward this time. We need someone to finish the plot of Song Yu, so we took the initiative to pull you from the parallel world. I apologize to you first, but as compensation, we will remit a sum of compensation to you in the original world after the end. You only need to stay in this world for 5 years to finish the plot, and then you can leave. Song Yu sneered. His clear dark eyes were full of coldness. Do you think I'm short of money? 008 didn't speak. Song Yu regarded this as a stupid book. He didn't want to waste 5 years here at all. He frowned irritably. I don't agree. Can you send me back now? 008 shrank with a guilty conscience. He didn't dare to look directly at Song Yu and lowered his head. I'm sorry, I don't have the ability. It tried to persuade Song Yu. In fact, these 5 years won't have any impact on you. As long as it doesn't affect the plot, we won't interfere with any of your actions. Time in your original world is static, and in this world you have a perfect family background. You can do a lot of things at will. Song Yu sneered. 008 was timid. After explaining this to Song Yu, he disappeared. That's it. You have a good rest. If you have something to do, you can call me at any time. Just shout 008 in your mind. Of course, he didn't necessarily come out. Song Yu stood in place, so angry that he had a toothache. At this time, Song's mother went upstairs and knocked on the door outside. Her voice was full of worry. Yu, what's the matter? Why did you suddenly go back to your room when you had a good meal? Song Yu tidied up his mood and went out to smile at Song's mother. It's nothing, Mom. Let's continue to eat. From the beginning to the end of the meal, Song Yu was absent-minded. Song's mother always paid attention to his mood and couldn't eat. She hesitated for a moment and said, Is it because Mom said that there was a banquet, which made you unhappy? Song Yu stirred the porridge with a spoon. He listened and said, No. Song's mother was distressed. If you don't like it, we won't do it. It's Mom's fault. I forgot that our baby Yu likes to be quiet. If there are any events in the future, Mom will help you cancel them. Song Yu sighed in his heart. The frustration and depression in his heart melted little by little under Song's mother's gentle and kind gaze. He treated this as a book, but every person in the book was not a thin paper person. They were real and alive. For example, the well-maintained noblewoman opposite him. Her love and worry for her son could not be faked. Song Yu lowered his head and drank a mouthful of porridge. He lowered his eyes, and his eyelashes were distinct. Song's mother and father were very busy and rarely had time to accompany Song Yu. Today, Song's mother had postponed many meetings to pick him up from the hospital and have dinner with him. After that, when he went to high school, he might spend more time with his family than with them. Song Yu didn't like a city. In gentle control, the prostitutes in a city were all crazy. In addition, he didn't know why, but when he transmigrated into this book, he always thought of that poor girl, Xiesui. He swallowed the porridge in his mouth. Song Yu thought of some plots in the book. Xiesui was the same age as him. It was also the summer vacation of high school, but she was not as lucky as him. This summer vacation, in order to earn money, Xiesui worked part-time with her life. She provoked a group of gangsters and was cheated by her black-hearted boss. In the process of fighting with the gangsters, Xiesui's fingers were broken. She didn't get the best treatment and had a lifelong illness. He was bullied at the beginning of high school, but he didn't resist because his hand was injured at that time. Song Yu thought of the insults and trampling on Xiesui and the innocence and kindness of this young man at the beginning. Xiesui provoked the gangsters in order to save a girl who was almost bullied by them. The more he thought about it, the more upset he became. The book Gentle Control should be renamed The Tragic Life of Xiesui. Anyway, when he read it, on the one hand, he was annoyed by those idiots, on the other hand, he sympathized with Xiesui. He only had 5 years in this book. He could spend these 1,800 days eating and drinking. Perhaps he could also change a person's fate. Song Yu's dark eyes were full of emotions. Finally, he put down the spoon with a trace of determination. Mom, I want to transfer to another school. Song Yu's mother, ? Jingcheng, where Xiesui lived, was the hometown of Song Yu's grandmother. Song Yu said lightly, I want to go to Jingcheng and visit my grandmother. I want to stay there for a while. The news that Song Yu came back spread in the top circle of a city. Everyone was very curious about the third child of the Song family who had been recuperating and didn't show up. They talked about him as if he was a god and were looking forward to seeing him at the banquet of the Song family. Only Song Yu's sister, Song Weining, knew that these people had no chance at all. Because on the third day after Song Yu was discharged from the hospital, he got on the plane to Jingcheng. Song Weining's sister's messages bombarded him on his mobile phone. Song Weining happy smiley, Song Weining, what do you mean? Are you targeting me? Don't you want to embarrass me? Knife, 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 Song Weining, I just bragged to our sisters that I would let them see your beautiful face, but you got on the plane right after. At this time, Song Yu had arrived in Jingcheng. He got off the plane and got on the car to his grandmother's house. Jingcheng was also a provincial capital. It was prosperous and lively, but it was not as extravagant and impetuous as a city. The black car drove to the city center, and the trees on both sides of the street sped past. The driver was an honest man in his 50s. He smiled at him and said, the old lady has lived alone in Jingcheng for many years. She is idle and lonely. When she heard that you were coming, she was so happy that she cooked a lot of home-cooked dishes. She has been talking about it since this morning. Song Yu replied to Song Weining's message and said with a smile, yes, I believe in Grandma's cooking. The driver said, young master, are you going to Jingcheng No. 1 Middle School? Song Yu said, yes. The driver's eyes lit up. That's great. My son is also in Jingcheng No. 1 Middle School. I will ask him to take good care of you in school. It was no secret that Song Yu was weak and sickly. Song Yu accepted his kindness and smiled gently. Thank you, uncle. But he didn't think he was that precious. This disease was purely made up by the author to make him die. Anyway, he didn't feel sick at all. He wouldn't be afraid of a fight. His mobile phone was still flashing. Song Yu, what kind of explanation do you want? Song Weining, what kind of explanation do you think I want? You suddenly transferred to Jingcheng without even a reason? What's wrong with you in a city? I've lived so comfortably for so many years. Now that I'm out of the province, I feel uncomfortable all over. Song Yu, TSK. Song Weining, tell me quickly. Song Yu, what's the reason? The world is so big. I want to see it for you. Song Weining, they couldn't be siblings anymore. Chapter 3. The Meng family in Jing City is one of the top families in the area. Although most of the recent generations are involved in politics and business, the temperament of a scholarly family is still in their bones. Song Yu's grandmother was a standard beauty when she was young. Even when she was old, her delicacy and gentleness were still the same. Her pale hair was neatly combed. At this time, she stood on tiptoe at the carved iron gate and looked at the end of the road nervously and expectantly. Song Yu got off the car. The warm light illuminated the young man's delicate and pale face. Grandmother Meng saw him and her eyes turned red. She rubbed the corners of her eyes and said, Yu has grown up. I didn't recognize you for a while. Song Yu smiled and supported her. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. It's windy outside. Let's go in first. Grandmother Meng smiled and patted the back of his hand. She whispered, it's not long. It's good that you're here. Walking in, Song Yu saw a lot of people. They were all from the Meng family. Most of them were the younger generation. His cousins gathered together. When they saw him coming in, they all stood up and greeted him warmly. But their eyes were twinkling and not pure. Song Yu knew their purpose. They probably listened to the adults and came to deal with him because of the reputation of the Song family in a city. These are your cousins. They are a family. In the future, if you want to go anywhere in Jing City, you can find them. They are more familiar with this city than you are. Grandmother Meng introduced them one by one. Her purpose was very simple. She was afraid that Song Yu would feel lonely in Jing City, so she wanted him to meet more people of his age. But Song Yu was not interested in them. Song Yu was born in the original world, so he could deal with this kind of situation with ease. He smiled politely and obediently, but his attitude was very cold. After they sat down, the family ate quietly. Grandmother Meng was a lady of a noble family. When she was young, her family was very strict. Now she still kept the tradition of not talking while eating. Since she didn't speak, the younger generation in the family naturally didn't dare to be presumptuous. Although their eyes were anxiously staring at Song Yu, they didn't talk. This was a good thing for Song Yu. After he finished eating, he used the excuse that he was tired from sitting in the car for too long as an excuse to go upstairs to take a shower and sleep. He left a group of people at the dining table with complicated and gloomy expressions, wanting to say something but hesitating. After taking a shower and drying his hair, Song Yu let himself lie on the bed. There was a faint jasmine scent on the pillow. The air in Jing City was fresher than that in a city. Grandmother Meng had planted a lot of flowers in the garden. The evening breeze was gentle, and it was very peaceful. Song Yu stared at the ceiling, thinking about what to do next. If he suddenly went to Xie, he would definitely be treated as a lunatic. Should he wait until school reopens? Anyway, they would be in the same class. No. Song Yu covered his eyes with his hands. He thought that Xie's fingers would be broken this summer, and it would leave a lifelong illness. He had better save her. But where does he live? Oh right, he had forgotten the most important point. Where does Xie live? Thinking of this, Song Yu suddenly sat up with his eyes wide open. Fuck, how could this be? 008. 008. Song Yu began to shout 008 crazily. After a while, 008's weak and complicated voice sounded in his mind. I'm here. What can I do for you? Song Yu sat up straight. Do you have Xie's current address? 008 subconsciously said, of course. But soon it reacted and asked Xie in horror and vigilance, what do you want this for? Song Yu smiled. Of course I'm going to look for him 008. 008 was anxious and angry. He appeared in front of Song Yu in his original form. After looking around the environment, his heart was like dead ashes. He suppressed his anger and said, Host, what are you doing? Why are you in Jing City? Song Yu said, didn't you say that I could do whatever I wanted in these 5 years? 008 was anxious, but my premise is that you don't affect the plot. You can't be in Jing City now. You can't meet the protagonist. It's not time for you to appear. Go back quickly. Song Yu picked up his eyebrows. It was a little afraid of Song Yu in his heart, so he could only persuade him earnestly, Host, go back. Go back to a city. You can't appear in front of Xie as Song Yu. It's out of the plot. Song Yu sat cross-legged on the bed and smiled indifferently. That's simple. I don't need the identity of Song Yu. I remember that in the original book, Xie has been calling Song Yu's English name, and he is so young now, it is impossible for him to remember me. I can just make up an identity and appear beside him. 008's tone was anxious. That's not how it is. Song Yu snapped his fingers. That's how it is. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You can just tell me Xie's address. 008 was speechless. He was so angry that smoke came out of his head. Seeing this, Song Yu simply stopped smiling and said lightly, You ignored my will and forced me into this world. You should have thought about the consequences. 008 bowed his head and pursed his lower lip. 008 was really bad, but they were systems full of humane feelings. They had no choice but to admit that they were in the wrong. For a long time, he gritted his teeth and scratched his head. With an extremely ugly face, he made a concession. I want to ask for instructions from the main world. You don't act rashly. Even if you appear beside Xie, don't reveal your identity. Song Yu got a satisfactory answer and smiled. No problem, there is not only one A city in this world. Third child Song is called Song Yu. 008 didn't want to pay attention to Song Yu at all now. He turned into a wisp of smoke and returned to Song Yu's mind. Song Yu was stunned. Hey, you haven't told me the address of Xie Sui's house yet. I don't know. In response, 008 roared angrily. Song Yu, so, what did he call it for? He didn't get any information, but gave himself a lot of restrictions. What a useless system. It didn't do anything except make him feel uncomfortable. Song Yu sighed, lay back and fell asleep. Looking for a person in such a big Jing city seemed to be like looking for a needle in a haystack. But for Song Yu, it was not impossible. After all, he had an uncle who was the mayor and a group of cousins who were eager to have a good relationship with him. But he didn't need to use these connections. By accident, he met Xie Sui. On the third day of his arrival in Jing City, Grandmother Meng was afraid that he would be bored at home, so she tried to persuade him to go out for a walk. Unable to bear his grandmother's urging, Song Yu got in his cousin Meng Guang's car. Meng Guang's sports car was wine red, as flashy as others. He took off his sunglasses, revealing a pair of flirtatious eyes. He looked at Song Yu in the passenger seat and said, "Is my grandmother annoying?" Song Yu smiled, "It's okay." "What do you mean it's okay?" Meng Guang chuckled and stepped on the accelerator. "She has so many rules here. Every time I come here, I'll barely make it in the first 2 days, but on the third day, I'll be scolded from morning to night." Song Yu smiled but didn't say anything. He liked Grandmother Meng's cooking, so he was quite comfortable these days. Meng Guang stared ahead and suddenly smiled. "Cousin, how old are you?" Song Yu was stunned. 15. Meng Guang smiled more happily and winked at him ambiguously. "That's old enough. I'll take you to a fun place, do you want to?" Meng Guang was his uncle's only son, the mayor's son. He was the prince of the whole Jing city. If he said it was fun, then it must be extraordinary. Song Yu was a little tempted, but he still reminded him, "Cousin, I can't drink." Meng Guang smiled. "Don't worry, I won't let you touch a drop of alcohol. If anything happens to you, not to mention my grandmother, even my hot-tempered aunt will fly over from a city and peel off a layer of my skin." Song Yu was amused. Meng Guang said, "Take it as an apology for not picking you up 3 days ago. I'll take you to a fun place." "Nod, do you want to?" Song Yu had nothing to do now. Anyway, he was free, so he simply agreed. Meng Guang smiled. "Okay, this is our secret. You have to be loyal. Don't turn around and sell me out." Song Yu laughed. "I won't tell Grandma." After getting Song Yu's promise, Meng Guang turned the car around and drove to the south. Although Meng Guang liked to play and was open, Song Yu was his cousin. He was still underage and pure, so he naturally wouldn't take him to a place that was not suitable for children. Otherwise, what was the difference between him and a beast? Meng Guang took Song Yu to a high-class club called Lin Shui. After entering, they showed their membership cards at the front desk and were led inside by the waiter. After passing through the luxurious hall, they walked through a pitch-black corridor before exiting. What greeted their eyes was an antique courtyard. The red wooden corridor was built over the pool. Looking down, there were koi fish swimming in the clear water. Meng Guang said, "Cousin, I'll take you to meet some of my friends." Song Yu nodded. Meng Guang's friends were all famous young masters in Jing City. Today was actually a small private gathering for them. Usually, it was a party for the rich young masters, but because of Song Yu's presence, the brothers didn't have the face to ask a hostess to accompany them. Thus, it became like a normal KTV. A few of them snatched the microphone and poured the devilish sound into his ears. Meng Guang was furious. "Are you going to ruin my cousin's ears like this?" One of them sneered, "If the microphone is in your hands, it will be a devastating injury." Meng Guang slammed the table angrily. "Who are you looking down on?" Song Yu, who was leaning on the sofa and drinking water, finally understood. He had been tricked by his cousin. He said it so ambiguously and mysteriously to lure him here. In fact, he couldn't avoid Grandmother Meng, and he didn't want to stand his brother up, so he pretended to trick him to come here. He had fallen into a trap. Song Yu couldn't stand this group of tone-deaf people. He couldn't bear it anymore and said, "Cousin, I'm going outside to get some fresh air." Meng Guang was already having fun and waved his hand. "Okay, don't run around." Song Yu went out to get some fresh air and also to go to the bathroom. However, after walking around the courtyard for a long time, he still couldn't find the bathroom. After walking around, he went out and inexplicably arrived on the second floor of the Lin Shui Club. Chapter 4. The lights in the Lin Shui veranda were especially dim, and the color was slightly blue. Every room was tightly shut, isolating them from the outside world. The thick red carpet absorbed the sound. Song Yu followed the indicator lights and walked to the innermost part. After using the toilet, Song Yu washed his hands, thinking that he might as well send a message to his cousin and run away. Anyway, he didn't want to listen to them sing anymore. At this time, 2 staff members wearing Lin Shui clothes came out of the toilet and chatted beside him. The sound of water splashing clearly reached Song Yu's ears. Are all children so stubborn nowadays? Yeah, I don't know if he's stupid or naive. He's really showing off. That woman is obviously in this line of work. She's pure and innocent just because she shed 2 drops of tears. I guess she just didn't expect to meet such a ruthless person like second young Master Wang. She planned to run away at the last minute and let the new kid help her deal with it. Second young Master Wang has never been soft on women. She didn't want to suffer, so she pushed him into the fire pit. How vicious. The point is that the kid still believed her nonsense. What a joke. Does he think he's safe because he's a man? Second young Master Wang's private life is extremely messy. That kid looks like that. If he went in to deliver wine, he would probably be half dead when he came out. After turning off the tap, one of them paused and suddenly asked, "I heard from the manager that the kid is still a high school student. If something happens, it will be on the social news." The other person sneered. Who's to blame? One is willing to be beaten and the other is willing to be beaten. No one forced him. And don't worry, with the Wang family around, this news won't come out. Song Yu wiped his hands with a tissue, thinking that the world of the rich and powerful was so wonderful. A society ruled by law was like a decoration. Of course, if it wasn't like this, how could it be convenient for those idiots to do beastly things? Song Yu wasn't someone who would leave someone in the lurch. He planned to report this matter to the front desk later. He couldn't just watch someone else's child be defiled. He took out his phone and typed a message to his cousin. "Cousin, I'll take a taxi back first." He pressed the send button. He heard the conversation between the 2 staff members walking to the door. "What's that kid's name? I think his surname is Xie Sui." "Yes, Xie Sui." His fingers were stiff. "Xie Sui? Fuck." Song Yu was stunned. Then, he put his phone in his pocket and suddenly strode out, shouting for the 2 staff members. "Wait." The 2 staff members were stunned. They turned around and saw a 15 or 16-year-old tall young man hurriedly coming out of the toilet. They worked in Lin Shui, so their service quality was still good. Looking at Song Yu's clothes, they knew that he had an extraordinary background. They asked, "Hello, what can I do for you?" Song Yu's tone was a little anxious. "Which room?" The staff member was confused. "What?" Song Yu suppressed the impatience in his heart. "Which room is Xie Sui in?" The staff member was put in a difficult position. Song Yu stared at them quietly. His dark eyes were full of seriousness as he said word by word, "Xie Sui and I are classmates." The staff member sighed in his heart. They were not cold-blooded people and said, "He's in room 305. Song Yu said thank you in a low voice and ran downstairs. On the way downstairs, he typed another message to his cousin. "I'm in room 305. If it was a stranger, Song Yu would also help, but he would not be in such a hurry. The name Xie Sui immediately caused the worry and uneasiness in his heart to peak. Because in addition to provoking perverts, Xie Sui's physique had another characteristic, which was that it was particularly easy to arouse other people's desire to abuse. In short, it was full of disasters. For others, it might just be drinking and vomiting. For Xie Sui, it was breaking her legs and smashing her head. In order to better abuse Xie Sui, the author really did everything. Song Yu cursed the original book's rubbish setting and ran to the front desk. His voice was mixed with the panting from running. "Miss, I want to report." The receptionist was stunned for a moment. She recognized that he was the person brought by Meng Guang and asked respectfully, "What did you say?" "Song Yu, I want to report that someone is causing trouble in room 305. The receptionist's exquisite makeup slightly stiffened. "Causing trouble? Okay, I'll ask." She was about to contact the service staff on the third floor, but the walkie-talkie was not connected yet. Song Yu had already slammed the table and shouted, "It's too late. Is your manager here? Lend me a few people first. My friend is in room 305. I feel that something will happen to him if we're a second late." The receptionist. Where did this little brat come from? She really wanted to call the security guards out. But for Prince Meng's sake, what could she do? She could only smile stiffly. Okay. Don't worry." In the backyard by the water, in a quaint private room. Meng Guang was tired after playing to his heart's content. He sat on the sofa and was about to open a bottle of wine when his phone suddenly flashed. He unlocked the screen and saw that it was a message from his cousin. 2 messages. "Cousin, I'll take a taxi back first. I'm in room 305. The 2 messages were only a few minutes apart. Meng Guang vaguely sensed that something was wrong. He opened a bottle of beer and asked casually, "Did anyone come to room 305 in Lin Shui today?" Sitting next to him was the young master of the Wei family. The Wei family was a giant in the food and entertainment industry in Jing City. They had a clubhouse in Lin Shui. Wei Gui said, 305. "Why are you asking this?" He was shuffling the cards when he suddenly remembered something. "No, I seem to have some recollection. When I went upstairs today, I met Wang Beidan and a group of people. They seemed to have entered room 305. Fart. Meng Guang spat out all the wine in his mouth. Wei Gui hurriedly moved to the side and scolded, "Fuck, are you asking for a beating?" Meng Guang was so angry that he crushed the bottle into a piece. He stood up, his eyes gloomy and his voice cold. "Wang Beidan?" The person beside him saw that he was very angry and asked curiously, "What's wrong? Although he's indeed disgusting, he didn't provoke you, right?" Wang Beidan had a bad reputation in their circle. He liked to hunt for novelties and had a perverted interest. In the past, he almost killed a third-rate female star in her apartment. It was the Wang family who paid a lot of money to suppress it. Meng Guang's face darkened and he said angrily, "My cousin is now in room 305. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The young master of the Song family looked like a well-behaved and delicate young man. Would Wang Beidan, this idiot, be blind to kidnap him? Meng Guang was eager to protect his younger brother. He strode out and gritted his teeth. "Fuck, if my younger brother loses even a strand of hair, I'll send him to the ICU today. Hey, wait, we'll go with you." Several young masters of Jing City also hurriedly stood up. What a joke, if something really happened to Song Yu, their legs would be broken by their elders. On the third floor of Lin Shui. Following behind Song Yu, the manager said bitterly, "Young master, how can we have your classmate here?" Song Yu's face was cold. "I said there is, so there is." The manager felt like he was being pushed into a fire pit by a brat, but he could only bite the bullet and knock on the door. After a while, the door of room 305 opened. The person who opened the door was a young man with dyed yellow hair. He had dark circles under his eyes and his face was full of displeasure. "What do you want?" The manager was sweating. "I heard that someone is causing trouble here, so I came to take a look." The yellow-haired man's mouth twitched. "No. Get out." After saying that, he slammed the door. But the door was held by a young man's slender and fair hand. A slightly cold voice sounded. "My friend is inside." The yellow-haired man looked back and saw a young man in a white t-shirt and jeans. His eyes immediately lit up. He originally liked boys and was used to being domineering in Jing City with Wang Beidan. Looking at Song Yu's fair and tender face, he felt his crotch heat up. He narrowed his eyes and laughed. "You mean the one called Xieswei? He is your friend. It's good to have friends." Do you want to come in and play? The manager wanted to remind Huang Maro. No, this one. Unexpectedly, Song Yu pushed him away and sneered. Okay. The yellow-haired man opened the door enthusiastically. Song Yu stepped in directly. Music was playing in the room and it was noisy. The light was chaotic and impetuous. The air was foul and the smell of alcohol was pungent. Several men were sitting on the sofa. Their belts were unfastened and there were bare-breasted women sitting on their hips. They were laughing, moaning and moaning. But they were holding the women's waists and looking at the center of the room playfully. They were making a fuss. Drink. Child Wang means what he says. After you drink, we will let that stupid woman go. Song Yu followed the line of sight and saw Xie Sui. He was the protagonist in Gentle Control. White shirt, black trousers. Xie Sui still had the childishness of a student, but his face was delicate and fierce. The light fell on his eyes and brows, and the coldness seemed to turn into frost. There were several empty bottles on the table. But Xie Sui's movements didn't stop. His slender hand opened the bottle and poured the wine in one breath, like an experienced hand. The young man unbuttoned his shirt to the second button and raised his head. The wine flowed from the corner of his mouth and rolled over his collarbone. He was unbelievably sexy. He drank a bottle. He put the bottle on the table. 10. The young man lowered his eyes and said coldly. In this abyss of debauchery, he was clean and indifferent like a ray of light. A woman kneeling on the ground, whose makeup had been ruined by crying, also raised her head and looked at him blankly. 10 bottles of the most deadly wine in Linshui. Even if she didn't die, her stomach would be perforated. A slightly plump man sat in the center of the sofa, smoking a cigarette and said meaningfully, You really finished it all. Xie Sui said indifferently, Let her go. Wang Bei stared at the young man's delicate face, licked his lower lip, and put out the cigarette on the table. Okay, I'll let her go. But I spent a lot of money to hire this woman. I feel like I lost a lot if I let her go with just 10 bottles of wine. Why don't you compensate me with something? Xie Sui's pupils shrank. She didn't speak, but her hands clenched little by little. The people next to her showed a meaningful smile. The person that young Master Wang liked definitely couldn't leave tonight. Wang Bei pushed the woman sitting on his lap away, spread his legs, and smiled obscenely. How about this? I called her to vent my desire. Why don't you use your mouth to make me come? How about we just forget about it? At the door of the private room, Huang Maro leaned against the door and was very dissatisfied. I'm playing with other children. What are you doing? Go away, go away. You're wasting my pleasure. The manager said bitterly, Don't. Something bad will happen. He was brought here by Prince Meng. Something bad will happen. Huang Mao, what? Who brought him here? The manager thought that something bad would happen. The next second, there was the sound of a bottle being smashed in the private room. Bang! It was as loud as thunder. Everyone was dumbfounded with fear. It was unknown when a young man had entered the private room. Without saying a word, he picked up the beer bottle on the table and threw it directly at Wang Bei's head. Wang Bei's pupils shrank. He barely dodged, but the bottle smashed into the wall and broke into pieces, making his face bloody. He touched the blood on his face and instantly went crazy. He shouted at the top of his lungs, Who let him in? Xie Sui was also stunned. Just a second ago, there was still darkness around him. The insults and disgusting gazes tortured his nerves and dignity bit by bit. The next second, someone suddenly appeared and broke the nightmare. He drank so much that his stomach was already in pain. His usually cold eyes were now a little confused. He looked at the person next to him silently. Song Yu walked out of the darkness. He was so angry that his liver hurt. He looked at Wang Bei and sneered. Aren't you venting your anger? I'll help you. He forced him to vent his anger. Chapter 5. In the early stages of Gentle Control, there were many plots like this where the protagonist was molested by a greasy middle-aged man in a clubroom. When the 3 psychopaths encountered such a situation, they would usually wait and see. When Xie Sui couldn't take it anymore, they would come out with a smile and say, Beg me and I'll take you away. Then, a dangerous hunting plot of a domineering CEO would unfold. When Song Yu first read the novel, he was so angry that his teeth almost broke. Beg me and I'll take you away? What kind of stupid request is that? Xie Wei was really pitiful. She was threatened after being insulted. Shouldn't she just shout and fight when she saw injustice? Song Yu wasn't afraid of Wang Beidan. As the third young master of a city, he could do whatever he wanted in such a melodramatic novel. Song Yu picked up another beer bottle and walked forward. Do you still have fire? Wang Beidan looked at him as if he was a lunatic and said angrily, Where are you? Where are you? You're a bunch of trash. Hurry up. Why are you afraid of a kid? He kicked the table and roared, Catch him. I'm going to smash his head with a beer bottle today. The group of people who were scared silly finally woke up. They quickly got up from the sofa and wanted to grab Song Yu. Xie Wei drank so much, but she forced herself to stay calm. Now, she was a little dizzy. She endured the discomfort and went forward to grab Song Yu's hand. Go away. Song Yu was angry and waiting for this group of people to come up and get beaten up. Suddenly, his hand was grabbed. Xie Wei's hand was very cold. There was a slight smell of alcohol on her, but it was a kind of refreshing smell. Song Yu tilted his head. Xie Wei was a little taller than him. What he saw was Xie Wei's chin and thin lips that were pursed into a line. Song Yu sighed in his heart about this unlucky child and said indifferently, It's okay. Don't worry about me. Wang Beidan stood up angrily and gritted his teeth. You still want to leave? Don't even think about leaving. You two lowly things who came out to sell, I'll kill you tonight. At this moment, there was a commotion outside room 305. Huang Maro blocked the door to prevent the manager from entering. Suddenly, he felt his body lean forward and hit the table directly. Bang! The door of room 305 was kicked open. Outside was Meng Guang, whose face was dark. Meng Guang wanted nothing more than to kill that grandson of his. Every word he said was extremely cold. Wang Beidan, how dare you touch my brother? Several waiters followed behind the crown prince of Jing City and burst into tears. Everyone in the room was dumbfounded because everyone in Jing City knew Meng Guang's face. No one dared to provoke the crown prince of the capital. Wang Beidan was also stunned. Meng Guang. Meng Guang kicked away Huang Maro, who was lying on the ground. As soon as he entered, he saw Song Yu holding a bottle of wine. Instantly, the crown prince of Jing City's eyes turned red. He took 2 steps forward and knocked Wang Beidan down with a punch. He pressed him onto the sofa and beat him up. Meng Guang roared angrily, Damn you, do you know that my brother can't drink? He beat him to death. How dare you force him to drink? Damn it, if I don't beat you to death today, my surname isn't Meng. Wang Beidan, ? The panic in Wang Beidan's heart turned into anger. He was also furious. Who the hell forced him to drink? He was the one who smashed my head with the bottle first. As for Meng Guang, he was already mad with anger. He punched and kicked and didn't have time to listen to him. How dare you force him to drink? Wang Beidan was about to die from anger. The group of people in the room looked at the scene in front of them stiffly. They were dumbfounded and didn't dare to touch Song Yu. The manager didn't know what he had done and was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. Most importantly, his young master was watching the show happily. Wei Ci said, Why are you so anxious? We have long wanted to teach Wang Beidan a lesson. Don't worry, Meng Guang knows what to do. He won't die. The manager, Song Yu, who was holding the bottle, was also shocked by his cousin. That was too fierce. Before he could regain his senses, he suddenly felt the person beside him stagger and fall on top of him. He turned his head and saw that Xie Wei's face was pale and his forehead was covered in sweat. Song Yu was shocked and hurriedly shouted, Hurry, hurry, come and help him to the hospital. In the end, Xie Wei didn't go to the hospital and went to sit in the lounge. After leaving the smoky room, the cold white light illuminated Xie Wei's facial features even more clearly. After all, he was the main character in the novel and was really good-looking. His eyelashes were very long and his pupils were pure black. His eyes were curved inwards and curved outwards, cold and gorgeous. Xie Sui was still a pitiful little girl. He was sensitive, self-abased, and stubborn. He was fearful and uneasy when faced with sudden kindness. He could face insults and ridicule indifferently, but he didn't dare to look directly at the worry and enthusiasm in someone's eyes. "You really don't want to go to the hospital?" Song Yu asked. Xie Sui lowered his head and said, "Yes." Song Yu thought about it and could understand. After all, Xie Sui had an old lady at home. He probably did all this work behind Grandma Chen's back. He didn't want the old lady to know and worry. "Song Yu, give me your phone number." Xie Sui was stunned. The young man's pale face flashed with helplessness. After a long time, he lowered his head and said, "I don't have a phone." Song Yu, sorry, he forgot. Grandma Chen was now living on a meager allowance. Their family was very poor. "Then tell me your address." Xie Sui was stunned. Song Yu said reasonably, "I saved you. Of course, I choose to take responsibility. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a waste of time and energy?" Xie Sui pursed his lips, lowered his eyelashes, covered his pupils, and gave Song Yu an address. Song Yu wrote down his address and smiled in a good mood. "TSK, Garbage 008, what's the use of having you?" He already had the address. Song Yu was very happy to get the address. He said to Xie Sui, "My name is Song Yu. I just came to Jing City. We will probably be classmates." Xie Sui was a little lost. Perhaps he was helpless to the kindness of a stranger. He said slowly, My name is Xie Sui." Song Yu smiled. He looked well behaved. When he smiled seriously, he was particularly likable. "Yes, Xie Sui. What a nice name." He listened to people singing in Linshui for the whole afternoon. Now it was already evening. After such a big thing happened in Linshui, he was not in the mood to continue the business. He quickly cleared the place and asked the staff to get off work early. When Xie Sui went out, Song Yu handed him the medicine that he had specially asked someone to buy. "Go back and take the medicine. Have a good sleep. Young man, you can't play with your body like that." Xie Sui took the medicine. Under the moonlight, the young man's eyelashes trembled. His delicate and cold facial features were a little stunned. After a long time, he looked up and said softly, "Thank you." His voice was indifferent, but it was a little hoarse. It seemed that he was forcibly suppressing some emotions that he should not have. Song Yu sighed in his heart. He waved to him and went back. After all, he still had something to deal with. What a joke. Although his cousin had caused trouble and sent someone to the hospital, it was all because of him. Moreover, Song Yu was very happy to see it. At that time, she was crazily mocking him in her heart. If uncle and auntie asked about it, she would definitely help to put in a good word. The moment he walked out of Linshui, the fear on Xie Sui's face disappeared completely. In an instant, his temperament became mysterious and dangerous. His eyes were still cold, but he had the indifference of a person who had been in a high position for a long time. Xie Sui opened his hand. In his palm was a small listening device. It recorded all the conversations in the private room. Xie Sui lowered his eyes. His eyes were cold and mocking, and the corners of his mouth curved slightly. Sooner or later, the Wang family would be destroyed in the hands of Wang Beidan, the idiot who spoke without restraint. The bustling high-rise buildings covered the sky. He took a step forward. When he passed by a trash can at the intersection, he wanted to throw the medicine in his other hand into it. However, Xie Sui was stunned in the end. The young man's face under the gorgeous lights flashed in his mind. For some reason, his fingers tightened and he held the medicine in his hand again. He laughed in a low voice. "Song Yu." Chapter 6. In the main house of the Meng family, in the exquisite and elegant hall. Meng Guang knelt on the ground with his head lowered and didn't say anything. However, his expression was like a prick. He had an attitude that said, "You can scold me as much as you want. If I admit I'm wrong, it's my loss." Anyway, his father was furious. Father Meng was about to be angered to death by this unfilial son. "Fight. You even sent him to the hospital. Since you're so powerful, why don't you beat me up too?" Do you still think you're very powerful and that you're not wrong? Bring me a board. I'll teach him a lesson today, and tomorrow he'll have to kill someone for me." The servant trembled as she handed over a long wooden board. Mother Meng was extremely anxious. "Hey, aren't you going to listen to our child's explanation?" Father Meng shouted irritably, "His son is in the hospital, and you still want to explain?" Meng Guang was still kneeling on the ground and didn't say a word. Song Yu saw that his cousin wasn't going to tell him, so he could only brace himself and stand up. "No, uncle. Actually, I'm also responsible for what happened today." He suddenly spoke, and everyone in the room was stunned and looked at him. Song Yu continued to brace himself. "I was also in Lin Shui today. Cousin fought with Wang Beidan because of me." Grandmother Meng's eyes widened. She was old and couldn't accept this at all. Yu, why did you go to Lin Shui?" As far as she knew, Lin Shui was a foul place. Father Meng also frowned. Yu, go to sleep first. Don't speak for this brat. I know what kind of person he is." No. It's true." Song Yu hurriedly said, "Uncle, you can look at the surveillance camera. Wang Beidan forced me to drink. I sent a message to my cousin, and he rushed over to save me. That's why he fought with Wang." Of course, there was no surveillance camera. Wang Beidan hid in the private room and did those things. How could there be any evidence left? They must have gotten rid of the surveillance camera long ago. Grandmother Meng's eyes widened. "What? Drink? They forced you to drink?" Mother Meng was also stunned. She had a good relationship with Song Yu's mother, and she knew that Song Yu had almost died because of a glass of wine when he was a child. Meng Guang's mother was furious when she thought about how her sister-in-law's son had almost gotten into an accident because of her. Meng Guang's temper was most likely inherited from her. Meng Guang's mother snatched the board from her father's hand. "Did you hear that? This time, I'll stand with my son." "Well done. I think he hit me too lightly." What Wang Bei did alone was not a secret in Jing City. Beating such a beast to death would be enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. Mr. Meng's initial surprise was also dispelled by his wife's shrewdness. He was furious. "Look at what you're saying. What kind of mother are you? So you did the right thing as a father." They began to quarrel in a chaotic manner. Grandmother Meng was annoyed when she heard that. She slammed the table and said, "Go back to your room and quarrel. Your son has been kneeling on the ground for half a day." Poor Mayor Meng, who was gentle and elegant on the outside, was angered by the two women at home. He left without eating. Meng Guang was helped up by Meng Guang's mother. He winked at Song Yu. After dinner, Song Yu still wanted to go back to his grandmother's house. Meng Guang drove him back. There was the sound of insects chirping in the garden outside the house. The night sky was clear and the moon was bright. Meng Guang couldn't help laughing in the car. He leaned on the steering wheel and laughed. "You're really spirited. Your brother didn't risk his life to help you vent your anger in vain. Oh, look at my father's face. Ha ha ha." Song Yu pulled the corners of his mouth. "You're happy too early. The Wang family won't let this matter go." Meng Guang lifted his eyelids and said indifferently, "So what if they won't let this matter go? What Wang Beidan did in the private room can't be seen in public. They didn't dare to publicize this matter. They could only suffer in silence. He had been the crown prince of Jing City for so many years. He knew what he was doing. He knew clearly what he could and couldn't provoke. He also knew whether it would blow up." Song Yu said, "Yes." Meng Guang suddenly reacted. "Did Wang Beidan really force you to drink?" He didn't see it clearly at that time. Now that he thought about it, it seemed a little strange. Song Yu smiled and said, No. I wanted to hit him with the bottle." Meng Guang, after a while, he laughed. "Good job." He tilted his head and asked curiously, "Why did you go to room 305? Isn't it for ventilation?" Song Yu thought for a while and smiled. "It's probably because fate wants me to save people." Just as Meng Guang said, this matter didn't cause any trouble in Jing City. For Song Yu, the only effect was that Grandmother Meng still had lingering fears and didn't force him to go out anymore. Song Yu looked up the Wang family in Jing City and finally understood why he felt so familiar. In Gentle Control, the rich second-generation heir who made things difficult for Xie in high school was the youngest son of the Wang family, Wang Ci. Everyone in the family doted on him like a treasure. In Jing City, he could get whatever he wanted. With Wang Beidan as his elder brother, Wang Ci began to play with women and men when he was very young. He was rotten to the core. In high school, his mind was full of dirty thoughts. After school, he locked Xie in the classroom and wanted to take nude photos of Xie to threaten him. During the sports meet, he deliberately drugged Xie's drink to embarrass him in front of the whole school. During the final exam, he locked Xie in the toilet to prevent him from taking the exam and getting a scholarship. Even in the college entrance examination, Wang Ci wanted to make Xie miss the exam and ruin Xie's life. Song Yu felt that he was looking for trouble because he couldn't think about the plot of the original novel. On the third day of doing nothing at home, Grandma was afraid that he would be bored, so she brought him a child of the same age. The son of the driver who picked him up from the airport that day was a skinny boy with wheat-colored skin. His name was Ma Xiaoding. Ma Xiaoding didn't know what his father told him. At first, he talked to Song Yu like a mosquito, as if he would be hospitalized if his voice was a little louder. It was only after Song Yu couldn't bear it anymore and warned him that he changed his attitude. Ma Xiaoding and Xie were classmates in junior high school. Song Yu wanted to know more about Xie, so he chatted with him. What was Xie like in junior high school? Ma Xiaoding widened his eyes and looked silly. Young master, why are you asking this? Song Yu didn't like this address. Don't call me young master. If you really admire me from the bottom of your heart, call me brother Yu. Ma Xiaoding scratched his head. Okay, young master. Ah, no, brother Yu. Why are you asking about Xie? Song Yu choked and immediately said, isn't this person the top student in Jing City's junior high school examination? His grades are good. I want to compare notes with him. Know yourself and know your enemy and you will never be defeated. Ma Xiaoding was instantly in awe. Although he didn't know how to compare notes, he still told Song Yu everything he knew. I feel that Xie is quite pitiful. His family should be very poor. He can wear a piece of clothing for 3 years. He's very antisocial and few people dare to approach him. After 3 years, he doesn't have a single friend. In the beginning, some people approached him. After all, he's good-looking and has good grades. It's not a loss to be friends with him. But some people in the class who lived in the same neighborhood as Xie often talked bad about Xie's mother behind our backs. They said that Xie's mother died of AIDS and jumped off a building. AIDS can be transmitted from mother to child. Xie most likely has it too. Now, everyone in the class was scared. Anyway, Xie never took the initiative to interact with others. Over time, he became an invisible person in the class. Everyone deliberately ignored him, including the teachers. I didn't hear Xie say anything in the 3 years of junior high school. He often slept in class. I heard that he didn't study at home and worked in a restaurant. A group of troublemakers in the class knew where he worked and collectively made things difficult for him. They talked loudly about AIDS and made Xie lose his job. Xie didn't say anything and suppressed his feelings. Once, when I came back from an internet cafe, I saw Xie's face and body covered in blood. He was supporting himself against a pillar and vomiting. Ma Xiaoding sighed. He should be with a group of gangsters outside the school. He can get money by helping to fight a fight. But this money is exchanged with his life. Song Yu's face became colder and colder as he listened. He looked down and played with his phone. Ma Xiaoding looked at the sky and continued, of course, I think those people are talking nonsense. AIDS is not something to joke about. They're too much. I wanted to help Xie, but he's too cold and unapproachable. It takes half a day to get a reply from him. He probably doesn't want to talk to us. Song Yu suddenly remembered that the boy's horse thank you last night. He sneered, switched to the navigation page, and entered Xie's address. Song Yu said, it's not that he's unapproachable. It's just that his environment was too bad and he never felt any warmth. He was at a loss when it came to kindness and gentleness. Ma Xiaoding said, "Huh?" Song Yu jumped out of bed and said, "I'm going out. Tell my grandma that I'm going to buy some books." Ma Xiaoding said, question mark. Song Yu paused and made up a random excuse. "When in Rome, do as the Romans do. I'm going to buy some books from Jing City to prepare for my lessons." Ma Xiaoding said, "Were all rich second-generation heirs these days so hardworking?" Chapter 7. Yu, are you okay? Why did you get into trouble as soon as you arrived in Jing City? Do you want to go back to a city? I'm worried about you if you stay there alone. Song Yu sat in the taxi and looked at his mother's message. He thought for a while and replied, "No. Grandma took good care of me. I was too stubborn this time. I'm sorry, Mom." He waited for a long time and didn't get a reply. Maybe Mom Song was busy now. Song Yu switched the page to a navigation map. It was hot in July in Jing City and cicadas were chirping loudly. After getting out of the taxi, Song Yu looked around and walked in the shade. He could see the end of the alley. There were vegetable leaves scattered on the ground. It was probably a vegetable market in the morning. The buildings beside the street were old. He could see the blackened walls and peeling lime when he walked in. The telephone poles were plastered with all sorts of "paying a lot of money for children." Someone had spat on the flyers scattered on the ground. There were few cars on the way. Most of the people he heard were women cursing each other. It was depressing, poor, and noisy. Xie Sui grew up in this place. Song Yu bypassed the alley and came to a normal street. He guessed that Xie Sui was working now, so he walked along the street. When he found Xie Sui, she was in front of a small restaurant. But something seemed to have happened. There were some people around the street. In the center of the street was a bicycle that had fallen over. Xie Sui was squatting down to pick up the vegetables silently. A woman holding a child next to her stood there and cursed loudly. "My child and I were walking on the street. He hit us with his bicycle. This vicious bastard did it on purpose. My child is so young. He wants to kill him. That bicycle almost hit my child. Is he blind? He did it on purpose. What sin did my family commit to meet her and her mother? He is indeed the son of a bitch. His mother seduced men as soon as she came. He is not a good man either. What a nasty, vicious bastard. I don't know what kind of good intentions that old woman has. She disgusts the whole street." Filthy words came out of the woman's mouth. Xie Sui's back was stiff and fragile as she squatted on the ground. Her black hair fell down to cover her expression. When the woman mentioned his mother, the boy's fingers instantly clenched into fists. He raised his head and roared like a trapped beast, "My mother didn't." His imposing manner scared the woman. She took a step back and immediately raised her voice. Look, this bastard son of a bitch has revealed his true face. Someone hit someone. He's going to hit someone." Xie Sui gritted her teeth as if she wanted to stand up. The woman roared even louder, "That brat is hitting me." In the next second, Xie Sui was kicked in the head by a tall and strong man who walked out of the crowd. Bastard. At this time, Xie Sui was 15 years old and thin. She was kicked to the pillar next to her, and her forehead was bleeding from the friction. The adult man stepped on Xie Sui's hand. "You bumped into me and you still want to hit me?" The onlookers began to point and whisper. "I thought he was pitiful at first, but now I think that a pitiful person must have something to hate. He's hated by everyone. He should look at himself to find the reason. How could she hit such a young child? Xie Sui is really vicious. Can that old woman send him away? He's like a jinx. Nothing good ever happens when he's here." The woman was still scolding. "He almost killed my child and he still wants to hit me. He's hopeless. He's hopeless. Who's going to call the police? People like him should stay in prison for the rest of their lives. They shouldn't come out to harm others." Song Yu heard her words clearly as he walked over. He squeezed through the crowd and saw this scene. For Xie Sui, such things happened countless times every day. Slander, abuse, and beatings. The author of the original novel constantly emphasized his tragic childhood in order to shape his fragile and sensitive heart and pave the way for the emotional drama. Let Attack 1, Attack 2, Attack 3 soothe his wounds with words. It was funny. It was just a few words, but for Xie Sui, who was full of trauma, it was so precious that she could die for it. Every single person in the book was like that. The adult man seemed to think that he was righteous. Yang Yang was so proud that she wanted to slap Xie Sui. You don't have a father or a mother. I'll be your father and teach you how to be a man. Song Yu picked up a few marbles on the ground and threw them at his face. One of them almost got into his eyes. The adult man was so scared that he screamed, took a step back, and let go of Xie Sui's hand. Who hit me? He was furious. When he looked up and saw Song Yu, he was so angry. You're his classmate, aren't you? I'll teach you a lesson today. He rolled up his sleeves and strode over aggressively. The adult man was quite intimidating, but Song Yu didn't look at him from beginning to end. He was on the phone. Hello, 110? I want to call the police. There's a fight on Lianyun Street. An adult man is bullying a high school student. He's almost beaten to death. Come quickly. The police on the other side of the phone seemed to be asking for some details. Song Yu shouted into the phone, that high school student is me. Are you going to do something if someone dies? Everyone, beep. After hanging up the phone, Song Yu looked coldly at the adult man. His action of calling the police was so flashy that it scared the group of onlookers. The adult man was also stunned 3 steps away from him. He raised his fist but couldn't bring himself to hit him. Song Yu was too lazy to pay attention to him. He walked straight to the mother and son and said to the child who had been hiding behind the mother, "Give me your hand." The woman screamed like she was protecting a chicken. "What are you doing?" Song Yu walked past her and pulled the child out. Then he opened the child's palm and held a slingshot in it. The woman's face instantly turned pale. Song Yu laughed. "Oh, not bad, kid. You're quite accurate at shooting marbles." He tilted his head and said to the woman, "Auntie, I've called the police." Look at who was detained in the end. All the onlookers were speechless at this moment. There was an obvious mark of a marble on Xie Sui's face, and it was right in front of her eyes. If she was a little unlucky, she might have gone blind. The woman looked flustered. "What's wrong with my child playing with marbles? He's only 5 years old. What does he know?" Song Yu, he doesn't know anything, but his mother does. The child was frightened by Song Yu's expression and tone. He suddenly burst into tears. When he cried, the woman instantly became confident and scolded him like a shrew. "I think you're in cahoots with that bitch son of a bitch. One of you hit someone, and the other came over to distort the truth and bully me and my son. Sure enough, uneducated people play with uneducated people. Snakes and rats from the same nest. They're all the same. You're also a black-hearted bitch with a rotten belly." Song Yu looked at her mean eyes and said lightly, "Save some energy for the police to come and explain." The woman scolded angrily, "My child is only 5 years old. He doesn't know anything. What is he afraid of? Xie Sui's mother died early. She's an uneducated bitch. She's very vicious. Now, she didn't mention anything about the bicycle hitting her." Song Yu was so angry that he laughed. He said elegantly, "Auntie, I'm 15 years old now. I'm not an adult, and I don't know anything either. What am I afraid of?" He stepped forward, and his dark eyes revealed a bone-chilling coldness. "I'm not even afraid of killing people." The woman was completely speechless at this moment. She swallowed those vicious words in her stomach, took her child's hand, and stepped back. "Crazy, crazy," Song Yu laughed. Xie Sui, who was sitting on the ground, raised her head and looked at Song Yu's handsome side profile thoughtfully. He didn't have time to pretend to be scared and sad when he was 15 years old. His eyes under his black hair were deep and cold, like gorgeous and cold gems. Xie Sui reached out and touched the blood on her forehead expressionlessly. She suddenly felt bored. In order to make that family live a life worse than death, she suffered these injuries. What a loss. After a while, a fashionably dressed man and woman came out of the shopping mall across the street. The man had a big belly, and the woman looked mean. The woman was wearing high heels and cursing the terrible weather in Jing City. When she reached the car, her face suddenly changed. She screamed when she saw the spider webs on the car window that she bought with tens of millions of yuan. The woman on the other side of the street was scared by Song Yu and didn't dare to curse loudly. She could only curse secretly. She was not afraid at all. She dared to close her eyes and let her son shoot Xie Sui, who was riding a bicycle with marbles. She was also confident. Her son was only 5 years old. He was so young. What was there to be afraid of? Song Yu went over to support Xie Sui. "Are you okay?" Xie Sui looked down and stared at his hand for a long time. She hid the deep thoughts and doubts in her eyes and said weakly, "Thank you." Song Yu's heart ached for the protagonist. She sighed. "You have to go to the hospital this time." Xie Sui's injuries looked really hideous. There was a bruise on his forehead and blood kept flowing out. Song Yu leaned over and smelled a very light fragrance. In fact, this injury was really a piece of cake for Xie Sui. When he was young, he used to work for street gangsters with knives for a little money. Bleeding and getting injured had become a habit. Later, when he became young master seer of a city, he encountered those disgusting things again. He was kidnapped and assassinated. He drove a gun and jumped across the sea. Now, this small injury was really nothing. He didn't care in his heart, but he pretended to be tolerant. Xie Sui nodded. Her pale face and silent look made Song Yu's heart ache. The sound of a police car sounded from the end of the street. Just as the onlookers turned to look at the police, a voice rang out. A woman walked over aggressively from the opposite side of the street and slapped the woman who was holding the child's hand. Slap. The woman's expression was stunned. She was good at making a scene and scolding people, but she had never been hit directly. She was stunned by the slap. The woman who walked across the street raised the child's hand and looked at the slingshot. She was furious. She raised her hand and slapped the child again. "You're the bitch, aren't you?" The child cried even louder. The woman's eyes were red and she was anxious. "What are you doing, bitch? Slap." Another slap. The owner of the luxury car was also a shrewish person. When she heard the word bitch, how could she tolerate it? She shouted, "Why don't you ask your retarded son what he has done? He damaged my car. Tens of millions. Can you afford to pay for it, country bumpkin? Tens of millions." The woman was really in an ice cellar at this moment. Just now, when her son hit Xie Sui with marbles, Xie Sui was crossing the road. She didn't pay attention to whether she hit the car next to her. Regret and anxiety were overwhelming. She could only mutter, "Our child is only 5 years old. He's not sensible." The owner of the luxury car was so angry that she took a step forward. However, her high heels hit the marbles on the ground and she fell to the ground directly. She was in a terrible mood. Her irritable and arrogant temper reached its peak at this moment. A few policemen got out of the police car. They were still looking for the high school student who was almost beaten to death. Then, they heard a woman's angry roar. "The police are here. That's great. We're not done with this. Blame your uneducated son of a bitch. What an idiot. He's not sensible. I'm not sensible either." Chapter 8. Song Yu was also confused by this. What was this? A wicked person would be dealt with by another wicked person? Originally, he and Xie Sui were the protagonists, but now no one cared about them because of this incident. Cai Mingzhu's father was the president of a group in Jing City. She was used to being arrogant and domineering. She was calculative and narrow-minded. If they provoked her, it would not be as simple as compensating them with money. If she really wanted to kick this family out of Jing City, she had plenty of ways to make them miserable. In the police station, after checking the surveillance video and seeing the whole story, Song Yu was so angry that his face turned blue. It was the child who threw the stone, which almost hit Xie Sui's eyes. He braked suddenly and accidentally fell off the bike. The woman even made a false accusation, saying that Xie Sui had intentionally bumped into her. What wicked person! But now the woman's face was even uglier than his. Because the surveillance video clearly showed that it was her son's marble that hit the car. The woman had already knelt down. She was out of breath from crying and pulled her child to kneel down together. The 5-year-old boy was crying and howling after being beaten. The woman kept crying. "I was wrong, Miss Cai. Miss Cai, I'll beat this disobedient boy to death. I'll avenge you. I was wrong, Miss Cai, I can't afford it. Our whole family lives in a small house. Even if you kill me, you can't afford it." Cai Mingzhu sneered the whole time. In the end, the woman cried until she fainted. She completely regretted it and her intestines were twisted together. But it was too late. They came out of the police station. Song Yu took Xie Sui to a small clinic to get some medicine. "Can you still walk?" Xie Sui's leg was injured after falling off the bike. Song Yu frowned and looked at her leg. Xie Sui held a plastic bag of vegetables in one hand and said in a low voice, "I should be fine." Song Yu thought for a moment and said, "I'll take you home." Xie Sui was stunned, and her fingers involuntarily curled up. But when she saw Song Yu's serious expression, she nodded slowly. His dark and slightly curled eyelashes blocked the slightly cold light. It was already night time. Starlight shone on the road. The shadow of the street lamp was elongated. The July wind was slightly dry. Song Yu's irritable heart also calmed down. He thought for a moment and asked, "You're not working in Linshui anymore, are you?" Xie Sui replied softly, "Okay." Song Yu breathed a sigh of relief. "Yes, that place is a mess. It's not suitable for you to go there." Xie Sui hesitated for a while. Then he mustered up the courage to ask the question that had been lingering in his heart for a long time. Why did you?" He couldn't bring himself to say the last 3 words. Under the street lamp, the young man's delicate and cold facial features were a little helpless and confused. Song Yu answered, "Why is she so good to you?" Xie Sui's voice was so low that it blended into the wind. "Yes." Song Yu looked up at the night sky. His soft hair was floating slowly. "Probably. I'm too kind." Xie Sui, what a unique answer. Song Yu felt that he was too kind. Originally, 5 years had passed by just eating and drinking. But he had to come to Jing City to tear the playboys apart and call them shrews. He was almost moved by himself. He scratched his hair. "I just can't bear to see others being bullied in front of me. What a coincidence. Every time I meet you, it's this kind of trivial thing." Xie Sui couldn't help laughing. But Song Yu was immersed in his own world and didn't hear it. He said seriously, "I saved you twice. Anyway, it's fate. I can barely be considered a friend. Don't get me wrong. I treat others the same." Xie Sui smiled. "Okay." He didn't believe it. The Song family treasured this son so much. How could they bear to let him come to Jing City alone? Lin Shui could be said to be an accident. But Song Yu's appearance on Lianyun Street couldn't be fate. Song Yu came for him. Then, why? Speaking of which, he and Song Yu played together when they were young. But that was before the age of 5, so it was nothing. Xie Sui brought Song Yu to his house with a bit of curiosity. The corridor where Grandma Chen lived was very old. The voice-activated light was sometimes on and sometimes off. Song Yu stamped his feet several times before the turbid light bulb lit up. The stairs were very narrow. Song Yu helped Xie Sui up. There were a lot of flyers piled up in the corridor, which smelled old. Because the space was too small, Song Yu was almost next to Xie Sui. There was a very light fragrance of plants on his clothes. It was light and pleasant. Xie Sui looked down and saw the young man's neck. It was very white and fragile. For a moment, he was a little dazed. Which floor? The 3rd floor. For this small house, the 3rd floor was the top floor. When he opened the door, Grandma Chen had already fallen asleep on the sofa. There was only a blanket on her. The food on the table was untouched. It seemed that she was waiting for Xie Sui. The yellowish light shone on this small but warm room. Xie Sui put the vegetables on the table gently and walked to the sofa. Song Yu knew what he wanted to do and said, "Let me do it." "Your leg is not convenient now." He picked up Grandma Chen. Grandma Chen was old and her eyesight was not good. She woke up in a daze. "A Sui is back." Why did you go out so late? Song Yu said softly, Grandma Chen, I'm Xieshui's friend. Grandma Chen was half asleep and murmured, friend is good. A Sui has always been alone, Song Yu thought for a long time and whispered. He won't be alone in the future. The warm yellow light flowed through the young man's eyebrows and eyelashes. It was as gentle as the old time. Xieshui was behind him. Her eyes were cold and noble. After a long time, he sneered and turned to wash his hands. At the same time, he threw the marbles hidden in his sleeve into the trash can. The 15-year-old Xieshui did not have a single friend since childhood. Even if she was cold on the surface, she yearned for beauty in her bones and would be touched by some trivial things. However, the 25-year-old Xieshui had experienced too many flattery and people who approached him with ulterior motives. His appearance and family background brought him too many genuine and fake flattery. Indifference seeped into his bones. Kindness and gentleness could no longer move him like they did the 15-year-old him. Xieshui recalled some disgusting things from his previous life, and the corners of his lips curled up into a mocking smile that no one knew who it was directed at. How inferior would one be to be willing to do anything for a little warmth? How cowardly would one be to rely on others' help to get out of their obsession? When Song Yu came out, Xieshui was cooking noodles in the kitchen. Song Yu sat at the table without hesitation. Isn't there still rice? He turned off the fire. He brought out a bowl of steaming hot noodles. Xieshui's cooking skills were still very good. The noodles looked delicious with chopped green onions and a layer of minced meat and oil. The aroma entered his nose. Song Yu, who had not eaten all day, suddenly felt hungry. The rice is cold. Xieshui sat opposite him, pushed the noodles in front of him, and said, You eat. She remembered that Song Yu seemed to have not eaten all day. It was a repayment. Song Yu was stunned. For me. God, what kind of pitiful wife and loving mother was she? Xieshui seemed to be a little shy under his gaze. Yes. Thank you. Song Yu stirred the noodles with chopsticks and sighed in his heart. How could such a kind and lovely person be abused like this in the book? After eating, he left and called the driver to pick him up. Sitting in the car, the driver was very puzzled. Master, aren't you here to buy books? Why did you buy them here? Song Yu looked out of the window. I met a very important friend, so I changed my mind. The driver was surprised. You have only been in Jing City for a few days. How could you meet a very important friend? Song Yu seemed to make a lot of sense. Uncle, you don't understand. This is called old friends at first sight. Chapter 9. When Song Yu returned home, Grandmother Meng saw that he had returned safely. She asked him a few questions and didn't say anything else. After taking a shower, he returned to his room and lay under the blanket that smelled faintly of jasmine. Song Yu received a reply from Mama Song in a city. That's good. Is you used to living in Jing City? Song Yu replied. It's good. I quite like Jing City. After thinking for a while, Song Yu said, Mom, I want to live in school when school starts. There was still a month before school started. Accommodation was a key step. Mama Song replied quickly. Accommodation? Why do you want to live in school? Song Yu said, I want to experience a lively high school. These words made Mama Song's heart ache. Then I'll discuss with your grandmother and ask her to contact the principal to make arrangements. Song Yu smiled. Thank you, Mom. Song Yu wasn't very sleepy yet, so he played with his phone. He added Ma Xiaoding on QQ. This yellow-skinned youth had a very rich mental world. His online name was Sadako Never Forget the Well Digger, and his profile picture was Sadako with disheveled hair. Song Yu was sure that he had been beaten up a lot because of this profile picture. His signature was even more Chunibya. I can climb out of the TV, but I can't climb into your heart. Song Yu. Awesome. It was amazing that he could exude the aura of being destined to be alone from his online name to his profile picture to his signature. Ma Xiaoding added him and was very excited. He first sent an emoji to test him. When he found Song Yu's name, he was shocked. Sadako Never Forget the Well Digger. Fuck, brother Yu, your name is 666. Song Yu's online name was randomly chosen. He originally wanted to follow the rules, but then he thought that he was a 15-year-old teenager now. If he wasn't Chunibya now, when would he be? So he changed it to your husband brother Yu, which was his previous name in the game, which was used to flirt with girls. Song Yu looked at his profile picture of Sadako expressionlessly. Your husband brother Yu, not as good as you. Sadako never forget the well digger. Cute, cute. Not long after, Ma Xiaoding sent a message. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. No. I still think that brother Yu's name is 6. If you don't change your name, I'll really think that I'm talking to my own husband. Song Yu laughed out loud. Your husband brother Yu, then hurry up and change your name. I beg you, don't be gay. Sadako does not forget the well digger. Aggrieved, brother Yu, you despise me. Fortunately, Ma Xiaoding was not looking for him for nothing. As a native of Jing City, he naturally knew more about Jing City No. 1 Middle School than Song Yu did. He told him a lot of things. First, he sent a message to the group. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Brother Yu, this is the freshman group for this year's No. 1 Middle School. Join us. It was another URL. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Brother Yu, this is the campus club, the social forum of Jing City No. 1 Middle School. You can go in and see our ecological environment. I think it's quite fun. Song Yu was not interested in the freshman group, but he was really idle. He clicked on the URL sent by Ma Xiaoding and registered an account with his QQ. He was too idle, so he didn't change his name and just entered the group. The forum was on the homepage, and the top post was about the freshmen's questions. All kinds of senior sisters and senior brothers were busy. There were a lot of posts. New school belle and school beau of No. 1 Middle School. Freshmen, tell us your name, height, and address. Let's meet before school starts. Do you dare to play? Hurry, hurry. We need one of the 5 rows in the canyon. One big boss with 4 dishes. Now we have 4 dishes. Big boss is here. Hurry up. Is there anyone with a big boss who can tell me when the second cafeteria will open during the summer vacation? Song Yu browsed through the posts. The bright moonlight outside Jing City shone in, and the insects in the garden were chirping. He leaned against the pillow and browsed through the posts with a smile. This was the real world. The life of a high school teenager was carefree and colorful. However, the book Gentle Control gave Xie the darkest and most obscure side of the campus. Class oppression, emotional violence, and unfairness. You shouldn't be like this. Song Yu murmured. Xie was such a good teenager. He shouldn't have to bear the abuse and insults at this age. He would be an influential figure in the school. He would have excellent grades and a handsome face. Many people would have a crush on him. His name would be written in a fragrant diary by the girl. He would be a good student in the eyes of the teachers. When the teachers asked questions in class, they would always look at him with certainty and a smile on their faces. He would be the object of many bad students' flattery. Every time he had an exam, a group of people would gather around him and chatter. He would live a confident, excellent, and bright life. This should be his high school. Grandmother Meng contacted the headmaster of Jing City No. 1 Middle School. She first talked about Song Yu's situation and accommodation. She learned from Ma Xiaoding that Song Yu was passionate about learning. She also asked him what he needed to prepare for the beginning of the first year of high school. After getting the headmaster's serious and dedicated answer, Grandmother Meng was satisfied and bought a pile of books and exercises. She sent them to Song Yu's room and said gently, You, just do your best. Don't tire yourself out. Song Yu sat on the bed and looked at the 2 piles of books on the ground with a stiff expression. He moved his lips with difficulty and said, Thank you, Grandma. Grandma, don't worry. He would never tire himself out. Song Yu had forgotten all his high school knowledge during the summer vacation after graduation. It was very painful for him to pick it up again. Although he didn't want to be a top student, it was really shameful to score last in the exam. Song Yu couldn't calm down at home, so he went to find Xie. Before he left, he took a book and a test paper with him. Xie worked at a milk tea shop. The milk tea shop was very lively now. Basically, girls were drinking milk tea in twos and threes. However, their eyes kept drifting to Xiesui. They were probably here to look at handsome guys. He was tall and had long legs. He was cold and abstinent. Looking at him on a hot day was more effective than looking at an air conditioner. Song Yu ordered a glass of lemonade and sat by the window. He took out his math test paper and bitterly wrote it with a pen. When he got stuck on a permutation problem, Song Yu forgot the formula. He was so depressed that he didn't even have the mood to use his phone to search on Baidu. He simply pulled a piece of tissue paper and wrote down a 6-digit permutation. When he wasn't satisfied with the first piece of tissue paper, he pulled another one. The shop quieted down. Xiesui saw that Song Yu's lemonade was almost empty, so she took another glass and went over. When he came over, Song Yu didn't notice him. He was concentrating on the test paper. Song Yu's eyelashes were curled up like a baby's. The sun shone through the camphor trees outside the street and hit his face. He looked strangely obedient. Xiesui saw that he was so serious that he even looked at the test paper. After seeing the question clearly, Xiesui fell silent. 7:20. A slightly cold voice sounded above his head. Song Yu's pen stopped. He was a little angry that he was interrupted. I was about to calculate it. You interrupted my train of thought. Xiesui, how could your simple algorithm have anything to do with train of thought? Chapter 10. Of course, Song Yu quickly realized how stupid he was. He pursed his lips and changed the topic. Are you off work? No. Xiesui sat opposite him and shook her head. She asked again, are you doing a question? Song Yu raised the mathematics book in his hand and said, yes. They had met twice, so their interaction was no longer so awkward. Song Yu complained, I'm really bored to write this. It's so troublesome. The more I write, the more tired I get. Actually, it's not troublesome. A 66, factorial of 6. Xiesui smiled and picked up a pen with her slender hand. She also took out a piece of paper and wrote a formula on it. She handed it to Song Yu. The question just now. Song Yu was so embarrassed that his ears turned red. He took it and said, thank you. Fortunately, another customer came into the milk tea shop at this time. Xiesui went to work. Song Yu looked at her back and poked a thin tube into the cup. He took a sip of the lemon water and felt the cool and sour taste of summer in his mouth. He was depressed. Would the protagonist think that he was a retard? Even primary school students would not calculate like that. The more he thought about it, the more annoyed he was. It was almost evening. Song Yu's paper was finally finished under his ample skill in answering questions. He chose the shortest answer with 3 long ones and 1 short ones. He chose the longest answer with 3 short ones. Copying was the main method and being confused was the secondary method. He was uncultured, but he could solve the world. After finishing the paper, Song Yu felt that his soul had been sublimated. Halfway through, the store manager asked Xiesui to buy some strawberries. In the deserted milk tea shop, a female employee finally found an opportunity to approach him enthusiastically. Little brother, can I ask what's your relationship with brother Xie? The female shop assistant's name was Xiao Shi. She was quite pretty and had big eyes. She wore a little orange lipstick and looked pure and beautiful. Song Yu finished his paper and was in a good mood. He answered casually, friends. When school starts, we might still be classmates. When Xiao Shi heard this, she smiled, revealing 2 sweet dimples. She seemed to be very happy. That's great. It turns out that brother Xie still has friends. She put the exquisite gift box she had been holding in her hand on the table and said softly, can I ask you for a favor? Song Yu was stunned. Confess. You'd better tell him that yourself. Xiao Shi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No, brother Xie doesn't even talk to me. I don't have the guts to confess to him. She lowered her head, and her hair fell behind her ears. She seemed to be reminiscing. Brother Xie saved my life last week, and I've been wanting to thank him. But I'm a little scared of him, so I haven't dared to say it out loud. Song Yu was stunned and suddenly felt that the name Xiaoxi was a little familiar. Xiaoxi bit her lips and continued, I want you to help me give this gift to him. Brother Xie might have forgotten, but I really want to thank him. Her eyes reddened as if she recalled something terrifying. She sniffled and said, I was walking alone at night and was almost taken away by those hooligans. He was the one who saved me. Brother Xie is really a very good person. Song Yu finally remembered. In the original book, Xie Sui got into trouble with those hooligans during the summer vacation and got her fingers broken because she saved this girl named Xiaoxi. Song Yu had mixed feelings in his heart. He bit the thin straw and thought for a while. He shook his head and said to Xiaoxi, since you think he's a very good person, why are you still afraid of him? Xiaoxi was stunned. Song Yu's eyelashes trembled slightly. Why don't you thank him in person? Maybe he hasn't forgotten. Maybe your gratitude will make him happy for a long time. Maybe he's been waiting for you. Xiaoxi's face was helpless and confused. Song Yu's words entered her ears. The girl's reddish eyes slowly became clear again, and they shone with a determined light. She held the delicately wrapped gift box back in her hand, took a deep breath, got up, and bowed to Song Yu. Thank you, I understand. Song Yu stirred the lemon slices and lime in the glass with a thin straw. He looked at Xie Sui, who came back with strawberries and suddenly received a gift at the door. Her expression was stiff. He couldn't help but lower his head and smile. He went into the book and came to Xie Sui's side. He felt sorry for this kind and innocent boy. He wanted him to get rid of the misfortune of the original book and live like he should at this age. He didn't want to be liked by him, nor did he want to be an indispensable person by his side. He wanted Xie Sui to see the gentleness of this world. It was not just his gentleness. The milk tea shop closed at 9 o'clock. As usual, Song Yu asked the driver to wait for him at the street intersection. After Xiaoxi gave the gift, her face was still red, but she was much bolder. Seeing that Song Yu was about to leave, she urged him. Brother Xie, go and see her off. Xie Sui frowned. This place could be said to be remote. There were only a few street lamps on the street, and the street was dark. Song Yu thought of something. Do you want to buy a cell phone? Xie Sui held the gift in her hand. Her expression was indifferent in the dark, but there was a trace of hostility in her dark eyes. Song Yu's arrival changed a lot of things, and he didn't like this feeling. Hey, are you listening to what I'm saying? Song Yu, who didn't get a reply, asked again. Xie Sui looked down and said indifferently, I'll buy one when I have enough money. Song Yu paused and asked, I have an old cell phone at home. I'm going to throw it away anyway. I'll sell it to you for 100 yuan. Do you want it? 100 yuan was no different from giving it away. Xie Sui's eyes were cold, and the irritation in her heart was getting worse. She licked her teeth and smiled. Okay. Xie Sui agreed so readily that Song Yu was stunned. He thought that with Xie Sui's sensitive and inferior character, he would have to say something like I'll throw it away even if you don't use it to persuade her. Okay, I'll bring it to you tomorrow. Then I'll accompany you to get a card. Song Yu was a little excited. This way, he could directly contact Xie Sui with his cell phone. He wanted to say something, but suddenly, a whistle came from the front. A young man's hooligan words came. Hey, isn't this our big hero? I've been looking for you for a long time, and now you've delivered yourself to me. Song Yu turned his head and looked forward. Under the street lamp, a few hooligans were squatting and smoking. They had yellow hair and were wearing leather jackets. They put out the cigarette butts with their feet and walked toward them with a fierce expression. To be exact, they were walking toward Xie Sui. The young man in the lead was thin and sallow. There was a hideous scar on his face. He stared at Xie Sui and sneered. You were lucky last time. This time, all my people are here. Tonight, even if you don't die, you'll have to break one of your arms. There were about 7 or 8 of them, and they all had things in their hands. They looked like they didn't care about their lives. The chains on their clothes reflected the light, and their eyes were extremely vicious. Song Yu thought, oh, here comes the big plot point in the original novel. Here comes revenge. He was a little regretful that he didn't bring a bodyguard today. In the dark, Xiesui coldly twitched the corner of his mouth. The hostility and ruthlessness on his handsome face were more intense than this group of people's. It just so happened that he was feeling very irritated, and this group of people was here to help him vent his anger. He reached out and grabbed Song Yu's wrist. His voice was low and cold. "I caused this trouble. You go first." How could Song Yu leave him alone? If he left him alone, Xiesui's arm would be gone. Song Yu pulled him behind him and said coldly, "Shut up. I'll do it." Xiesui was speechless. The leading hooligan with wine-red hair laughed. Song Yu was dressed like those obedient boys, and he was holding a math book in his hand. He was clean and handsome, and he didn't look intimidating at all. He spat on the ground, took a step forward, and grabbed Song Yu's collar. "Don't meddle in things that you shouldn't meddle in. Be careful not to get yourself into trouble. But since you've already meddled, just admit that you're unlucky, little chick. I like to beat bookworms the most. It's best if you become stupid." He grinned and waved his arm. It looked like he was going to hit Song Yu against a telephone pole. Xiesui's expression turned cold. But the next second, there was a scream on the street. The person who was thrown to the ground was actually the red-haired hooligan. In a flash, Song Yu counterattacked and kicked him in one go. The young man's light brown hair brushed his eyebrows and eyes. His seemingly obedient and docile facial features revealed a fierce look. The red-haired hooligan covered his stomach on the ground. He looked up and glared angrily. "You're courting death. Let's see who dies first." Song Yu sneered. He rolled up the math book in his hand, stepped on Hong Mao's arm, and hit him on the head with the book. Every hit was full of strength. The people next to him were stunned. Even Xiesui, who had been calm for many years, was stunned by this kid for a few seconds. Hong Mao screamed and wanted to struggle, but Song Yu's strength was frightening. He was humiliated and angry. He turned back and roared, "You're still standing and watching. Take your weapons and kill him for me." The underlings realized that they had brought weapons with them. In an instant, they swarmed up with iron rods and knives. "You're finished. How dare you provoke our Azure Dragon gang? Tonight, it's useless even if you kneel down and call me daddy." Song Yu released his foot from Hong Mao and entered a few numbers on his phone. While waiting for the call to be connected, he smiled coldly at the group of hooligans. "Still calling me daddy?" He patted Hong Mao's face with the math book and sneered. "You should do some homework before you come out. There's a street in the north and south of the city. Ask around and find out who the daddy is." The hooligans had never heard such arrogant words. They were so angry that their faces turned green. Damn, how could someone be so arrogant? As for Xiesui, he was really amused by this child. The irritation in his heart slowly dissipated in the gentle night breeze. Perhaps Song Yu had brought a lot of variables, but he had also brought him a lot of new experiences. At least, he didn't dislike it. Hong Mao was so angry that he wanted to jump up. "You call someone? It's useless even if you call someone. Tonight, either you die or I die." Song Yu was already on the phone. "Hello, Uncle Ma, drive the car in. There are a few delinquents blocking the traffic. You can kill them by the way." Chapter 11. When Uncle Ma received the call, he was confused. What? However, he still followed his young master's instructions and drove the car in. The headlights of the car lit up, and two beams of light pierced through the dark street. The gangsters felt that the light was so dazzling that they could not open their eyes. They looked terrified. "Fuck. Is this real?" Hong Mao looked at Song Yu as if he was looking at a lunatic. He was probably really afraid that something would happen. He stumbled up from the ground and said, "Just you wait." The gangsters put down their weapons and ran away with their boss. Uncle Ma honked a few times and watched speechlessly as the hooligans left in terror. He then parked the car in front of Song Yu. Song Yu was talking to Xiesui. "They're just a bunch of gangsters. When they come to fight with you, don't fight them head on. Use the 110. He was afraid that Xiesui would repeat the same mistake and break her hand when he was not around. Xiesui's dark eyes had a hint of a smile. She nodded. Song Yu asked again, Did you buy insurance? Xiesui, no. Song Yu gave him a suggestion. Buy insurance. In the future, you can do whatever you want in Lianyun Street. Xiesui smiled. Okay. Uncle Ma. Young master, I think there's something wrong with your thinking. Uncle Ma sat back in the car. He held the steering wheel and asked curiously, Young master, is this your old friend? Song Yu, yes. Isn't he handsome? Uncle Ma laughed. He's very handsome. He's as handsome as you. When he got home, Grandmother Meng asked him about his studies. Song Yu was too embarrassed to show her the papers that he had less than 20% correct. He only said vaguely, I'm just a little bit better. Grandmother Meng was very pleased. She specially made a bowl of liver tonic soup for him. After drinking the soup, he took a shower and went to bed. Song Yu clicked on QQ and saw a female ghost's profile picture. She sent him several messages. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Brother Yu, I've investigated the matter you wanted me to investigate. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. I called a few brothers and asked Zhu Zhixing at the school gate. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Zhu Zhixing said that he wasn't sure if Xiesui was sick or not. He only heard it from his mother and a few aunties. Everyone on the street was saying that Xieshui's mother had AIDS, so he believed it. This idiot. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. I went to investigate again. What the hell? What did they mean by Xieshui's mother had AIDS? It was probably because of this group of gossipy women. The men at home couldn't control them. When Xieshui's mother first moved in, they tried to please her every day. She's so jealous that she wants to die. Nonsense. Sadako does not forget well digger. His mother seems to have opened a small restaurant. It's so hateful. I've decided to bring a group of brothers to make a scene tomorrow. Everyone on the street will say that the food is disgusting and piss her off. Let her experience the pain of gossip. Song Yu was amused by him. Your husband brother Yu, what kind of gossip are you talking about? Why don't you say that one of your brothers ate it and was hospitalized and hasn't come out yet? Your husband brother Yu, or put up a banner. The bastard boss's wife poisoned the food. Little Black, which I raised for 10 days, is gone just like that. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger, 666. My brother Yu is still fierce. Your husband brother Yu, fierce my foot. Do you think you can fight a group of shrews? Sadako doesn't forget the well digger, biting hand, feeling wronged. In fact, Song Yu didn't plan to do anything to that person. If he really counted, everyone on that street was a propagator of the rumors. Even Xieshui's junior high school classmates were indirect victims. It wasn't just in the 3rd year of junior high school. In the 10 years before that, Xieshui had only encountered colder treatment. Shouting on the street might not necessarily help her vent her anger. She might even be besieged by a group of shrews on Lianyun Street. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Brother Yu, what should we do? Song Yu suddenly remembered that there seemed to be an app called Diner in this world. It had a lot of traffic, and ordering takeout was the main reference. Your husband brother Yu, send me the name of his restaurant. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Oh. Song Yu entered the name of the restaurant and found that the rating of this restaurant was quite high. It was ranked at the top of the food chain, and the reviews were very good. Looking at the mechanical reviews, he guessed that they were all fake. Diner was now doing an activity related to limited ratings. The winning restaurant would get a reward of 10,000 yuan. Each user could only vote for a restaurant once. Song Yu narrowed his eyes. He took a screenshot and forwarded it to his sister. Song Yu, with this app, get me 500 accounts. Song Weinying, what's wrong with you? My poor brother. Song Weinying, did mom and dad deduct your living expenses? Did grandma throw you out of the house? Song Weinying, have you fallen to the point where you have to rely on fake orders to make a living? Song Yu, yes, sister. Song Yu, I'm wronged. Don't say it QAQ, who didn't know how to act cute? Song Weinying. Song Weinying, what do you want 500 accounts for? Song Yu, to accumulate virtue and do good deeds. These 4 words were full of murderous intent. Fortunately, Song Wanying was reliable. He found 500 accounts and sent them to him. The accounts and passwords were neatly arranged. Song Yu couldn't be bothered to deal with the internet water army. It was better for him to vent his anger on himself. The next day, he sat in the milk tea shop as usual. This time, he changed to a chemistry test paper. Xiao Shi bit her straw and sat opposite him. She was puzzled. Brother Yu, what are you doing? It's been 2 hours. Why haven't you done a single multiple choice question? Song Yu slowly cut to the numbers. I'm busy. Don't disturb me. Xiao Shi's eyes lit up. She leaned over. What are you busy with? Song Yu, I'm busy giving bad reviews. Xiao Shi, in the beginning, Song Yu was full of witty remarks. From the service attitude to the speed of serving the food to the hygienic environment to the taste of the meat and the freshness of the dishes, he dissed everything. At the beginning, he even added a "I've never eaten it before" to encourage himself to be a cloud customer who angered the merchants. But after such a long time, it was inevitable that he would run out of ideas. Hence, his style changed bit by bit. The reason for giving bad reviews was no different from a troll. The husband and wife lung slice I ordered actually didn't have a husband and wife. Suspected fraud, reported. The lady boss gave birth to a son, not a daughter. Spicy eyes, 1 star. After that, he did as he pleased. When I paid, I found out that I was still so poor. Sad, unhappy. Bad reviews. When I went out, I saw that there was only 1 son today. Unhappy. Bad reviews. Why am I still single now? Sad. Bad reviews. Didn't see the stars during the day. Frustrated. Bad reviews. Syria is still at war today. The Syrian people are so pitiful. Unhappy. Give me a bad review. Phut. Ha ha ha. Xiao Shi went behind Song Yu. When she saw the series of comments, she laughed so hard that she was about to cry. Brother Yu, what are you doing? This merchant must be angered to death by you. Xie Sui walked over at this moment. Xiao Shi and he took turns to be on duty. She immediately stuck out her tongue and ran to the cashier counter with a smile. Brother Xie, quickly come and stop him. Brother Yu is crazy. Song Yu. This lady, how can you say that? Chapter 12. Xie Sui rolled up her sleeves a little, revealing her fair wrists, and sat opposite Song Yu. Her eyes fell on his blank chemistry paper, and she smiled. You don't have any ideas at all? Why didn't he use God's way of rewarding the diligent? Song Yu's mind was not on the paper at all. He asked Xie Sui, do you still remember a person called Zhu Zhixing in your junior high class? Xie Sui was stunned. Her memory was very good, and she remembered in a moment. That idiot who did nothing but unite the whole class to isolate her every day during the 3rd year of junior high school? What's wrong with him? Xie Sui's tone was indifferent. She did not care at all, but on the surface, she still pretended to be surprised. Song Yu looked at her face and thought that Zhu Zhixing was really Xie Sui's nightmare in junior high school, and he became even angrier. Do you have anything to say to him? I'll write it in his damn shop for you. He thought for a moment and threw his phone to Xie Sui. Forget it. Maybe it's better to scold him to vent your anger. I have 1,000 accounts. You can scold him as much as you want. Xie Sui lowered her head and saw Song Yu's phone page. It was under Zhu Zhixing's mother's restaurant. The list was full of 1-star comments, and one of them was posted 3 seconds ago. I was so angry that I missed a breath of air today. Your restaurant has to be responsible for me. 1 star. There were even more unreasonable ones above. When I eat, I think of the poor people in Africa. They're so pitiful. Give me a 1-star rating. Xie Sui. Song Yu drank milk tea and chewed pearls. Don't be polite with me. Scold me as much as you want. Xie Sui could not help but laugh. For some reason, she was always amused by Song Yu's actions. Thank you, but there's no need. Song Yu widened her eyes and looked at him. Is it not enough? Shall we go and beat him up when school starts? The summer light shone through the glass window and fell on Song Yu's eyelashes. The young man's eyelashes were very curly, and they were covered with a layer of faint gold. He was biting on a thin tube with his teeth, and his hair was light and soft. He looked obedient and gentle. Xie Sui thought of last night. Song Yu's sharp eyes and cold smile under the light. This child's tone was also extremely arrogant. He smiled and shook his head. No need. Song Yu glanced at him, took the phone, and continued to cause trouble. The milk tea shop was very quiet now. The camphor tree outside was rustling in the dry and hot wind. Xie Sui touched his right wrist subconsciously. This was his habitual action when he was thinking. However, he found that there was nothing on his wrist. There was no watch. His black eyes narrowed as he realized that he was now 15 years old. Xie Sui was not obsessed with being reborn. In his previous life, he would not let go of any of the grudges that should be avenged, and not a single one of the people who deserved to die was left behind. When he was a teenager, his only regret was probably the death of Grandma Chen in his 3rd year of high school. Other than that, there was nothing else that could affect his emotions. Even when he went to Lin Shui to collect evidence of Wang Baiden's drug abuse, it was also the Wang family who provoked him first. As for that mother and son, they only had themselves to blame. After being reborn, young Master Xie, who was a bloody man in his previous life in a city, had a clear mind and few desires. After work at the milk tea shop, Song Yu took Xie Sui to get a card. After you got a phone, we contacted each other online. I come here every day now. Even my grandma is curious. Walking on the street, Xie Sui smiled faintly. What did you say to her? Song Yu, what else can I say? Didn't you get first place in the exam? I told her that I knew a top student and came here to learn from him. Xie Sui smiled and thought of Song Yu's unbearable math paper yesterday. What an honor. However, there was no need to ask. It was hopeless. When they reached the intersection, there were still more than 10 seconds before the traffic light turned green. When Song Yu saw it, he grabbed Xie Sui's hand and ran. Let's go. When the teenager grabbed her wrist and rushed forward, Xie Sui was stunned. The sunset illuminated the ground orange, and the wind carried the smell of camphor trees. In the distance, there were car horns, radio broadcasts, and passers-by talking. She looked at Song Yu's back view and her eyes became deeper. It took a lot of time to get a phone card in the business hall. When it was their turn and they finished, it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. Save your phone number first, then add me on QQ. Xie Sui entered the number and searched for contacts. When she saw your husband, Brother Yu, she clicked her tongue in her heart. What a child. Why did you choose this name? Song Yu's answer was very straightforward. Because it's handsome. She agreed to contact him. Song Yu realized that Xie Sui's online username was now a period. Her personality signature was also a period. Her profile picture was pure black, and she looked even more Chunibya than him. Mr. Period. You're so handsome. Xie Sui, after leaving the business hall, Song Yu felt thirsty, so he went to the convenience store next door to buy a bottle of water. When he paid, he also took a bag of mint candies. He liked cool things like lemon mint very much. When he put it in his mouth, he felt refreshed. Even the summer heat was reduced by a lot. As they walked toward Lianyun Street, the number of cars gradually decreased, and even the lights dimmed. Do you want some? Song Yu handed the mint candies to Xie Sui. Xie Sui didn't like to eat candies and shook her head. Oh. Song Yu took the candies back. At this moment, a gloomy and cold voice suddenly sounded in front of them. I want some. Little friend, are you going to give it to me? Immediately after, a group of people laughed evilly. Song Yu and Xie Sui looked forward. A group of hooligans walked out from the side alley. It was the same group of people from last night, but there were twice as many of them. Hong Maro held a nunchaku in his hand, and his scarred face sneered coldly. If his hatred was only directed at Xie Sui yesterday, then Song Yu was added to it today. Behind him, the green-haired and purple-haired Huang Maro also had a look of resentment. Brat. I was really scared by you yesterday. This time, I'll catch you on the way back, and you won't even be able to make a call. As the tyrant of Lianyun Street, Hong Maro was humiliated by two brats. He was so angry that his teeth itched. Don't talk nonsense today. Let's beat them up first. The lackeys behind him were also angry after being made a fool of yesterday. They held knives and sticks in their hands and slashed at Song Yu and Xie Sui. If you don't see blood today, you can't leave. Song Yu, fuck. Xie Sui narrowed his eyes. He felt that this group of hooligans really needed to be taught a lesson. He pulled Song Yu's hand, wanting him to leave first. Unexpectedly, Song Yu stood in front of him again, just like yesterday. Hong Maro laughed sinisterly. Are you afraid? It's too late to be afraid. Song Yu, of course I'm not afraid of you. Seeing blood? Good. He rolled up his sleeves. He shouted in annoyance, I lack everything, but insurance. If you lose a drop of my blood, you'll go bankrupt. Xie Sui. Hong Mao's group was intimidated at first, but then they remembered that they were made a fool of yesterday. They were instantly furious. You're still so arrogant when you're about to die. You're finished. Xie Sui, I'll do it. But he stopped himself from saying the last word. Because Song Yu had already grabbed his hand and ran to the other side of the street as fast as the wind. Let's go. 1 second after he said those harsh words, the next second, he turned around and ran. The hooligans were stunned. When they realized that they had been fooled, they were so angry that they stomped their feet. You can run. I'll call you father today. Chapter 13. Song Yu was not familiar with the terrain at all. He called the police as he ran. He was panting. Hello, 110? A group of delinquents ganged up on a poor high school student on Lianyun Street. Does anyone care? This group of delinquents with knives and sticks should be baptized by socialism. And Liang should be eradicated by the police. The police felt that these words were a bit familiar. This student. Were you also the one who called the police and got beaten up last time? However, Song Yu had already hung up. There were many alleys on Lianyun Street. The moonlight was blurred and the stars were dim, leaving long shadows of the street lamps. Song Yu walked around and finally found himself in a dead end. Fuck. They had temporarily shaken off the gangsters by turning left and right. However, this alley was very deep and connected to the main street. It was too dangerous to go back the way they came. Song Yu looked to the side and saw a trash can. He looked up at the height of the wall, gritted his teeth, and pointed up. Let's climb over. Xie Sui tilted her head and looked at him seriously with her dark eyes. Are you sure? Song Yu had already started to push her. Go up. The trash can was made of plastic. Song Yu only dared to step on the edge and had to use Xie Sui's strength to climb up the wall. After they sat on the wall, Song Yu turned his head back and cursed in the middle of the night. Fuck. Behind the wall was a family's yard. The fence in the yard was very sharp and had glass shards. If they jumped down, they would only see thorny bushes. Moreover, there was a sleeping dog. Song Yu, damn, he was afraid of dogs. At this time, Xie Sui had already sat down beside him very easily. The wind on the wall, the moonlight, and the street lamps were all different. The view became farther away, and the whole night seemed quieter. Song Yu didn't know how many mint candies he had eaten along the way. Even the wind carried the smell of mint candies. It was cool, sweet, and slightly spicy. Xie Sui followed his gaze and looked back. She lowered her voice and asked with a smile, "What should we do now?" Song Yu had been arrogant for so long, and for the first time, he was silent. Found it. This way. At this time, the thugs also caught up and blocked the dead end of the alley. When they saw the two sitting on the wall, they immediately laughed wildly. Brat, you're here. Ha 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 ha, you're the ones who forced yourselves into a desperate situation. Song Yu wasn't afraid of fighting with them. He had learned so many years of fighting in his previous life. He had been a school bully since he was a child. He wasn't afraid at all. However, they were armed with knives and rods, and it was difficult for him to explain to his grandmother that he was injured. If Grandmother Meng got serious and got to the bottom of it, he would never be able to see Xie Sui again. Hong Maro spat out a mouthful of phlegm, put the nunchaku on his shoulder, and walked with swagger. Sitting on the wall is a live target. You were so arrogant yesterday. Today, I'll make you cry and kneel. The green-haired man behind him asked a question, But boss, what are we going to do if they don't come down? Hong Maro greeted him with a palm strike and cursed. Are you an idiot? Why did they have to come down? Throw whatever you have in your hands and throw it at his face. Only then did his underlings obediently listen to his orders. When Song Yu heard this, he couldn't stand it anymore. He sneered and was about to jump down from the wall. However, when he looked down, he had accidentally kicked over the trash can. Song Yu was a little afraid of heights. Now, he felt dizzy for a second. At this height, would he break his leg if he jumped down? Seeing his pale face, the red-haired man laughed even more wildly. Go on, go on, go on. Today, I'll show you who's the boss of this street in the south and north of the city. Xie Sui admired Song Yu's changing face for a while. She held back her laughter and asked, "Where are you going?" Song Yu's principle in life had always been to not lose to others. He rolled up his sleeves and said coldly, "Just go down and do it." Xie Sui was really amused by this kid. She held him down and laughed. "Forget it. You were the one who did it last time. I'll take care of it this time." Song Yu was stunned and looked up at her. The stars in the city were dim, but the dim yellow streetlights were obvious. The young man's eyes were smiling, and his peach blossom eyes were curved outwards. He had a unique charm. He was calm and elegant. "Don't do anything stupid." Before Song Yu could finish speaking, he saw Xie Sui jump down from the wall with ease. Her landing posture was especially handsome. Hong Maro was stunned. Then, he gritted his teeth. "Are you courting death?" Xie Sui smiled. "I'm coming down to be a father." Song Yu pressed his fingers against the wall. His mouth was wide open. He was shocked. Isn't this protagonist a little different? Hong Mao's green-haired and purple-haired Huang Mao's group instantly exploded. "Xie Sui, is it fun to be a hero? I'll let you show off. This time, I'll break your leg." They shouted that they would break his leg. However, Song Yu, who was sitting on the wall, saw Xie Sui move swiftly and without any hesitation. He grabbed a steel rod and bent two gangsters at the waist. He grabbed Hong Mao's hair and slammed him against the wall with ease. He used all his strength with every hit, and the wall bled. After a while, there were continuous screams in the deep alley. The gangsters were armed with knives. Xie Sui was also bleeding, and it splashed on his white shirt. However, Xie Sui was expressionless the whole time, as if it was not his injury. Under his dark and messy bangs, his eyes were frighteningly vicious. He grabbed a knife from a gangster and stabbed his palm. Blood spurted out and splashed on the young man's delicate eyes. He bent over and sneered. His voice was playful and dangerous. "I'll teach you what it means to see blood." Song Yu sat on the wall and was stunned. Fierce. There were injured gangsters lying on the ground at his feet. Xie Sui's rationality was awakened by Song Yu's voice. He lowered his eyes and restrained his emotions. The police would be here soon. He could not kill them. The summer night wind turned cold. Xie Sui threw the knife in his hand on the ground, raised his hand to wipe the blood on his face, walked to the wall, and looked up. He and Song Yu were on the wall, and one was under the wall. One was looking up, and the other was looking down. "Do you want to come down?" he asked softly. The ferocity just now seemed to have disappeared in a flash. The young man in the white shirt stood at the entrance of the deep alley. The cold moonlight flowed on his delicate face, and his eyes were dark and serious. Clean and gentle. Song Yu came back to his senses, but he didn't feel good about it. Looking at Xie Sui's fighting posture just now, he remembered Ma Xiaoding once said that he worked for gangsters outside of school. He suddenly felt very distressed. What kind of fighting style was that? It was as if he didn't care about his life. The quiet night made people emotional, but Song Yu's emotions could not last for a second. Because when he lowered his head, he found that the problem was still there. The trash can had fallen. How could he get down? He could not let Xie Sui lift it out of the trash. "I can't go down." He was a little afraid of heights. Why did he encounter all kinds of unlucky things today? Xie Sui stared blankly for a moment before realizing what was going on. He smiled. "You jump down. I'll catch you." After all, he was the main character in Gentle Control. His smile was gentle even to the stars and the moon. Song Yu lowered his head. There was a little hesitation in his eyes, but in the end, he nodded solemnly. Then catch me accurately. Xie Sui smiled. There was an indescribable gentleness in his tone. Okay. Song Yu gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, and jumped down from the wall. At this time, the siren of the police car sounded on the street. The headlights shone into the deep alley. In the dazzling light, Song Yu fell into an embrace with a little smell of blood. He held Xie Sui's shoulder to cushion himself and stood steadily on the ground. And for Xie Sui. The moment Song Yu jumped down, it was more like stars falling from the sky. She fell into his arms. The minty wind. In the midsummer of Jing City, it was a minty hug. Chapter 14. In the communication room of the police station. The police officer and Song Yu looked at each other in bewilderment. The police officer held a pen and smiled faintly. Why is it you again? Song Yu replied slowly, probably because I'm born with a strong sense of responsibility and like to call the police when I encounter injustice. The police officer was amused. No, I'm asking why you're always the one being beaten up. Song Yu was speechless. Xie Sui laughed out loud. The gangsters were actually more seriously injured than them, but Hong Mao's group had already been recorded by the police and had countless criminal records. The police considered it legitimate self-defense, so they only recorded it briefly and let them go. They were supposed to contact their parents, but Song Yu took the initiative to talk about Xie Sui's family situation. His words were emotional and reasonable, so this part of the process was cancelled. They left the police station again and went to the small clinic again. There were only a few people in the clinic, and the lights were bright. The male doctor in the clinic still had an impression of them. The doctor said, last time, it was a leg injury. This time, it's a hand injury. Young man, you're quite wild. Xie Sui sat on the chair, her eyes slightly curved, and said modestly with a smile, it's okay. The doctor was so angry that he almost tore the pen on the paper. I said that you're wild, and you're so proud of yourself. Have you thought about how worried your family is? You're so young, yet you're studying obediently. Why do you have to hang out with a group of gangsters who don't do proper work? If something happens, your parents will be the ones who will be sad. Song Yu sucked on his mint candy and spoke up for Xie Sui. Uncle, you misunderstood. You can't just look at the surface. The doctor rolled his eyes at him. I haven't scolded you yet. You're his friend, right? So you just watched him fight. Didn't you try to persuade him? Song Yu choked and scratched his head awkwardly. We're not talking about the same thing. The doctor put the medicine into a bag and sneered. Fine. If you don't look at the surface, are you going to fight aliens and leave scars? Do aliens also use such down-to-earth cold weapons? Song Yu. The TV on the wall was playing Di-Jio Ao Timan. When the doctor's 2-year-old son heard this, he clapped his hands and turned his head. His big clear eyes curved as he laughed in a childish voice, crooked star silver. Xie Sui paid and took the medicine. Thank you. The doctor was exasperated. My son will grow up in the future. If he gets himself injured all over like you, I'll break his legs first. Song Yu chewed on the candy and shouted, I already said that you can't judge a book by its cover. Uncle, what's wrong with you? My friend was injured while ridding the evil and pacifying the good. He just fought one against 100 street bullies. They protected the personal safety and property safety of all the junior high and high school students in the north, south, and north of Lianyun Street. These are the scars of a hero. The doctor was speechless. The child sitting on the chair clapped his hands while drooling. Hero. Song Yu was amused. Hey, little kid, you're so smart. Say that again. The child who was praised smiled very sweetly and said in a childish voice, Brother, hero. Seeing that he was teaching his child bad things, the doctor angrily chased them away with a feather duster. Go, go, go. You fought against the street bullies. I think you're the biggest bully on Lianyun Street. Ha ha ha. Song Yu, who had been promoted as a street bully, couldn't stop laughing. He pulled Xie Sui out. A few moths gathered on a street lamp outside the clinic. In the quiet summer night, the whispers of insects could be heard from the bushes. It was already very late. Song-yu stood under the street lamp and called Uncle Ma, asking him to pick him up at the usual place. After hanging up the phone, Song-yu turned to Xie and said, "I won't come here much in the future. I'll see you at school during the summer break." Those hooligans had criminal records. This time, they would probably stay in the police station for a few days. Xie should be safe in July and August. It solved the most dangerous thing he would encounter during the summer break. Song-yu felt that there was no need to come here anymore. Xie nose was still filled with the smell of mint. She couldn't help but think about how much Song-yu liked peppermint. He retracted his fingers and smiled. "Okay, see you at school." Song-yu stared at him and thought of the fierce young man in the deep alley. He was speechless for a moment. For a moment, he felt that he didn't understand Xie anymore. But it seemed that he never really understood her. He got into the car. The car left the remote residential area and headed towards the bustling city center. The neon lights shone on Song-yu's thoughtful face. Uncle Ma asked, "Young master, are you still here to look for your old friend?" Song-yu came back to his senses. "Yes." Uncle Ma said, "You come here every day. Old madam is suspicious. I think if you come a few more times, she will meet your classmate." Song-yu laughed. I'm not coming. Actually, it wasn't a big deal for Grandmother Meng to meet Xie. It was just that he promised 008 that he couldn't appear by Xie's side as the third young master of the Song family. In the future, he planned to fabricate an identity as a distant and poor relative of the Meng family. If he met Grandmother Meng, it would be easy for him to be exposed. Song-yu added very few people on QQ. He lay in bed and played with his phone. Looking at the black profile picture of the period, he inexplicably felt a little itchy to send something. But today, he racked his brains to come up with bad reviews and ran around the street in the middle of the night. It took a lot of mental and physical energy. He was already very tired. He didn't know when he fell asleep. When he woke up the next day, it was already 9 in the morning. When he went downstairs for breakfast, Song-yu received Ma Xiaoding's bombardment. "Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Ha 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 ha. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Brother Yu, are you the one who is crazily giving bad reviews? I deliberately went to his place to eat today. When I saw Zhu Zhixing's mother's face turned green, I guess she was about to die of anger. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Ha 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 ha, you're so talented. I also asked my underlings to follow in your footsteps and give you a few good reviews. This vicious woman is going to die of anger." Song-yu was too lazy to care about Zhu Zhixing. When he thought of Grandmother Meng's expectant eyes and the stack of papers on the table, he suddenly had a headache. He drank the milk and sent a message to Ma Xiaoding. "Your husband Brother Yu, how are your grades? Sadako doesn't forget the well digger? Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Why are you asking this? It's okay, right? If you can get into Jing City First High School, your grades are not bad." Song-yu curled his lower lip and began to type. "Your husband Brother Yu, good grades in junior high school don't necessarily mean good grades in senior high school. Don't think that you can relax during the summer vacation after the middle school exams. Other people are crazily signing up for cram schools now. The competition in first high school is very strong. Every year, there are cases of students jumping off buildings. It's lucky that the government didn't close down the schools. You can't lose at the starting line in the first year of senior high school." Ma Xiaoding was stunned by his speech, which was the same as his father's. "Sadako doesn't forget the well digger. Brother Yu, what are you trying to say?" Song-yu had already returned to his room. He pulled out a chair and sat in front of the table, looking at the mountain of papers. "Your husband Brother Yu, come to me, I'll share some knowledge with you. Good brother, let's do the papers together. Sadako doesn't forget the well digger, let's not be good brothers, okay?" After giving half of the papers to Ma Xiaoding, Song-yu felt much better. Grandmother Meng had given him a lot of information. During the transition period of junior high school, most of it was to consolidate and revise junior high school knowledge bit by bit. There were even college entrance examination questions, just to give him a rough idea of the difficulty. Except for the first paper, Song Yu didn't prepare to write at all, but he slowly got the hang of it. He casually grabbed a paper at the bottom of a book. It was very difficult and didn't require him to do it. Song Yu flipped to the last question out of boredom and was stunned. It was a very classic function problem, e to the x power and e multiplied by x. He didn't plan to try the last question yet, but he vaguely felt that it was familiar. A very vague concept even appeared in his mind. He bit the pen and thought for a long time before finally remembering. Wasn't this a typical example of Lagrange's mean value theorem? The reason why he remembered this question so clearly was probably because his high school teacher had mentioned the name of this theorem when he was expanding the way to solve the problem. The theorem given on Baidu was very difficult to understand without a specific example. Song Yu just wanted to finish his first conversation with Xie Sui. So he took a picture of this question and sent him a message. For the shame of Issues A66, he bit the pen and thought. He pretended to be profound. Do you know what Lagrange's mean value theorem is? Xie Sui was leaning against the bed, tapping on the computer with his fingers. He hacked into Lin Shui's intranet and pulled up the surveillance records. After doing all this, he went to get the glass of water next to him and caught a glimpse of a bright message on his phone. Song Yu, do you know what Lagrange's mean value theorem is? Xie Sui, he should be glad that he didn't drink water. Xie Sui's grades had always been outstanding when he was a student, and he had a cold personality. He didn't have any contact with normal students. Therefore, he couldn't understand the brain circuit of a poor student like Song Yu who relied on perseverance to solve problems. You even have to rely on numbers to permute combinations. Why are you asking about Lagrange? Of course, Xie Sui didn't say this question that hurt his self-esteem. Because he could see that Song Yu seemed to be very enthusiastic about learning, and he didn't want to discourage him. Xie Sui took out a pen and a piece of paper. Taking into account Song Yu's knowledge reserve, he wrote down the standard solution to the question in detail, then took a picture and sent it over. Xie Sui, picture, Xie Sui, you don't need that. Song Yu waited for a long time for this sentence and a picture with clear ideas and beautiful handwriting. It was even easier to understand than the answer. Amazing. As expected of the protagonist, the pride of the heavens. However, when Song Yu reached a dead end, he persevered and continued to ask questions. Song Yu, how do you solve it with that? He also sent a few emoticons. Scratching head ? Balbalu, Xie Sui's fingers paused on the yellow bean. He seemed to have seen Song Yu's troubled look on the other side of the phone. He was a little lost in thought, then his thin lips curled up. Xie Sui, you want to know that much? Song Yu, yes. Xie Sui, cross out the big paragraph from the third to the fifth line and change it to no from Lagrange's mean value theorem. After Song Yu did as he said, she let out a sigh of regret that she was a bad student. Song Yu, there is a number that makes them equal in the interval. Xie Sui didn't want to tell him that it was a theorem. He thought for a while, then lowered his eyelashes and smiled mischievously. Xie Sui, didn't I give you an interval? You can go through them one by one. You'll find that number. Song Yu, your fucking interval is infinite. Why did he feel that Xie Sui was mocking him? Fucking. Chapter 15. With that in mind, Song Yu sent the message. Song Yu, what do you mean? I feel like you're looking down on me. After waiting for a long time, he received a reply from Xie Sui. Xie Sui, it doesn't seem like it. Song Yu, damn, this was her personality after spending so much time together. She was not even as pitiful as the first one. On the other side, Xie Sui had already turned off her phone with a smile. Beep, beep, beep. An email appeared on the computer. The name was Xu Shuren. His gaze fell on it. His smile was still there, but there was a hint of coldness. Xu Shuren, a Sui, I'm really happy that you're willing to contact me. Our family is very sad about what happened to your mother. But it's been so long. It's too late to say anything. Everyone misses you. Where are you now? I'll send someone to bring you back to a city immediately. Xie Sui lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. Miss him? Previously, The Shu family regarded his mother as the shame of the family. They directly cut ties with her and chased her out alone. They didn't even care if she died. Now, they were pretending to bring him back. They probably already found out that the wild man back then was the current head of the Xie family. How ironic. Xie Sui, thank you, Auntie. But I hope you won't tell Grandpa and Grandma about me first. I'll go back when I'm an adult. He didn't contact her to return to a city. Shu Shuren replied quickly. Why? Your Grandpa and Grandma will be very happy. Sui is 15 years old now. Come back. I'll arrange for you to go to the best high school in a city. What were they happy about? They had a pawn to climb up the Xie family. Xie Sui was expressionless. Her peach blossom eyes were deep and cold. Auntie, I'm a little scared. I'd better go back when I'm older. On the other side, Shu Shuren was also suddenly awakened by his words. Yes, it was not safe for Xie Sui to come back too early. After all, third young Master Xie still had a wife. Thinking of that woman's vicious methods, Shu Shuren was speechless for a moment. Then I'll respect your opinion. Study hard in a Sui. Give me your card number, and I'll transfer you some money first. If you need anything, just let me know. Of course, Xie Sui wouldn't stand on ceremony. However, this wasn't the only reason he contacted his aunt. In this life, he would return to the Xie family very soon. But before that, he wanted to give the Xie family a gift. Auntie, I'll send you something tomorrow. It's my mother's diary. Shu Shuren was stunned. Xie Sui's lips curled into a cold smile. South City Clubhouse. 10 years ago. I hope you can investigate it properly and give my mother justice. Speaking of which, the reason why his mother met Xie Xinian and was fooled for so long was because of his aunt. Shu Shuren was stupid and vicious. Even with her status, she didn't know Xie Xinian, who had just returned to the country. She probably just wanted to help a married man ruin his mother. She didn't expect this man to be the famous third young Master Xie of a city. With Shu Shuren's intelligence, he might think that his mother got the better end of the deal. Shu Shuren's eyes lit up. She had a guess in her heart, but she didn't dare to confirm it. She could only ask tentatively. Sui, you're talking about this. Xie Sui was too lazy to reply to her. You'll know tomorrow. South City Clubhouse. It was the place where Qin Qiuyun kidnapped his mother and caused his mother to have nightmares for the rest of her life. In his previous life, he was the one who sent Qin Qiuyun to prison personally. He recalled the scene where that arrogant woman stopped his car and knelt down to beg for mercy while sobbing. Xie Sui touched his wrist. Anger flashed across his eyes. In fact, at that moment, he wanted to hit her with his car. But now that he was reborn, his hatred for Qin Qiuyun wasn't as deep as it used to be. He just wanted them to bite each other. Grandmother Meng's garden was mostly planted with jasmine, which bloomed from May to August. The leaves were green, and the flowers were pale white. After the rain, they looked fresh and elegant. Song Yu took the scissors from the gardener and tried to cut it twice. The gardener almost had a heart attack when he saw this, so he silently returned the scissors. He sat back in his seat and looked at the papers in pain. Other people had romantic afternoon tea dates in the garden, but he had a math, physics, and chemistry meeting. In fact, Song Yu didn't want to work so hard. Yesterday, the grumpy papa Song finally found out that he had transferred schools. He flew into a rage and directly called him from a city, scolding him to his face. At that time, Song Yu was still lying in bed playing with his phone. Suddenly, he received a message from his sister. Song Weiniang, you're finished. Dad knows. Song Weiniang, Mom wanted to cover for you and tell Dad about this when you enter school. I didn't expect him to come back first. Song Weiniang, light candles, before Song Yu could reply, his phone rang. It was Dad. Song Yu. After he picked up, he was met with a scolding from the grumpy President Song. Song Yu, you're very bold. You've grown up, haven't you? You transferred to Jing City as soon as you were discharged. Don't you know what's wrong with your body? Song Yu, I'm sorry, Dad. I really don't know. Isn't this a medical problem? President Song, you even colluded with your mother and sister to lie to me. Don't you care about me? The head of the family? Song Yu was speechless. You're the one who gave yourself the title of the head of the family. President Song, I'll explain the situation to your grandmother later. Pack up and go back to a city tomorrow. Song Yu was anxious. Don't, Dad. President Song, it's useless to beg me. You should have known this day would come when you came to Jing City without saying a word. Song Yu was speechless with this menopausal man. Thinking of the papers during the day, he suddenly had an idea. After a moment of silence, he said deeply, Dad, actually, I came to Jing City to study better. President Song, ? On the other side of the phone, there was silence before the storm. Before he got angry, Song Yu hurriedly said, everyone in a city treats me like a clay Buddha. The school doesn't even allow me to attend physical education classes. They also ignore me when it comes to labor. I'm simply embarrassed in front of my female classmates. This has seriously affected my mood, thus affecting my learning efficiency. President Song. Song Yu, in a city, there are all of you, uncles, and aunts. Everything I do is monitored. Without the opportunity to develop feelings, friendships with female classmates of the same age, I also have no right to move freely. Even when I go to the library, I have to be watched. This is too cruel for a 15-year-old teenager who loves to study. President Song suppressed his anger. You can't stop talking about studying. Do you love to study so much? Song Yu knew that his father had been shaken. It was still useful to cry miserably. He gathered his emotions and said softly while holding the phone, yes, studying makes me happy. And I've only been in Jing City for about 10 days, but I've already made a very good friend. The first friend in my life. His grades are very good, and so is his personality. We can still make progress together. The teenager's voice was clear and bright, like the sunshine falling on the rice field. President Song was silent for a long time. The sound of the electric current was heard for a long time. President Song, who cared about his face, finally sneered. Since you love to study so much, did you think about it when you got 350 in the middle school examination in a city? Song Yu, can't a bad student love to study? Can't a bad student love to study? Is 350 not a score? President Song continued to sneer like a villain. You love to study so much. Well, if you can't get into the top 100 in the monthly examination of Jing City First Middle School, then get back here. Beep Song Yu. What the hell? Song Yu, Dad. However, what he got was President Song's merciless hanging up. Song Yu called in a flurry and was constantly rejected. Sorry, the subscriber you dialed is temporarily unavailable. Sorry, the subscriber you dialed is temporarily unavailable. In the end, even. Sorry, the subscriber you dialed is unavailable. Song Yu, he was really in a bad mood. Just like that, his father made a one-sided agreement with him about the results of the monthly examination. Shit. Song Yu went from writing papers perfunctorily to reading books in the garden. He was really hardworking. However, the knowledge that had been lost for so long was not easy to pick up. Before he even touched on trigonometric functions, the Pythagorean theorem was already giving him a headache. Song Yu put down his pen. He was in a terrible mood because of the 4 brothers, so he decided to vent his anger on the forum of Jing City First Middle School. He took out his phone, logged in, and entered the forum. It was the start of the school year, and posts were being refreshed very quickly. Father Song forced him to make a 1-month examination promise, and he was tortured mentally by garbage math for half a day. Song Yu was now a walking gas tank, the reincarnation of a pole on the playground. On this day, the forum of First Middle School was dominated by one person. You're going to high school, what kind of cigarette is smoking? 12L Your husband brother Yu, stealing the principal's cigarette and smoking it in front of him is the most impressive. 13L? 14L HH, can I get into your school with 287 marks in the middle school examination? 2L Your husband brother Yu, no. I handed in a blank paper in the middle school examination and impressed the principal with my courage. Can you do it, garbage? 3L, the person above seems familiar. 4L, it takes courage to get into first middle school. Repeat another year, little brother. Let's be each other's angel, okay? Why did you leave? 3L Your husband brother you, we don't have the same values. I want to be the God, but you don't want to be the messenger. 4L, brother you, why is it you again? 5L, XSWL online waiting for a messenger. Brothers, I've decided to hit on a girl in Moyo. She's my type, so I've decided to send a friend request later. How do you think I should send it? Should I introduce myself first? Let's talk about my situation first. Average height, looks, grades aren't bad, knows a little basketball, plays the guitar, piano, calligraphy, and is passable. So, what should I write on the application reason? 39L Your husband brother you, online dating, I like to play money. 40L, listen to brother you. 41L, listen to brother you plus 142L, I announce that brother you is now my new Prince Charming. 43L, as a girl, this kind of application reason is too heart-wrenching. Money isn't important, I just want to experience the feeling of online dating. Yesterday, I told my boyfriend that I had a fever of 40 degrees, and he replied that I was awesome. I want to ask, do you straight men only have one thing to say to comfort girls? Drink more warm water. Do you guys only know how to say fuck and awesome? Do you not know how to love at all? Brother you, I can't help it if that's what you think. 5L was speechless. 6L, OP, your comments are too weak. Look at brother you's comments. 7-1, brother you, I will go wherever there is a need to bicker. 8-1, brother you is late, but he's here. The reactions of the students of number 1 high school fell into the following 3 categories. Ha 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 ha. RI. Respondent. Chapter 16. Song Yu became famous on number 1 middle school's forum, and many such posts began to appear on the homepage. Some confessed, some mocked, and some directly scolded him. The post was as follows. Brother you, where are you from? You're quite arrogant. Your husband brother you, not in the underworld? Arrogant. It's all right. Anyway, I've never lacked a fight since I was young. Brother you, I want to confess to you. Why are you so outstanding? Every word you say makes me scream. Even your name is like a crazy poke into my heart. I feel like you're a man who grew on my spot. We're soulmates, a match made in heaven, doghead. Your husband brother you, so, as expected, we won't have anything to do with each other in reality. The comments section was filled with a strange atmosphere. What a pitiful pair of sisters. Brother you, don't love me. It won't work out. Oh, you're scolding your fans? So domineering. I love you. Brother you, are you going to reveal your real name and photos? I have a 36D lowly voice. Do you want to meet me in the little forest when school starts? Brother you, don't believe it. 36D lowly. It's a liar. Look at me. I'm super sweet. Hubby, do you need a leg accessory? Song Yu was in a bad mood. He randomly picked a reply. Your husband brother you, I need a crutch. Do you want to come? Behind him, there were more people confessing their love. Brother you, guess what uniform I like the most? Song Yu raised his eyebrows and sneered. Your husband brother you, subdued by me? Don't, sister. I won't fall for your trick. The onlookers. Fut, ha 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 ha. Don't, sister. I won't fall for your trick. Why do I have a voice message in my head? Voice message +1. Brother you is such a cold and heartless man. Bastard. I don't want to be your sister. I want to be your girlfriend. Song Yu didn't want to bother with those people anymore. After scolding them, he buried his head in the test paper again and immersed himself in the Dead Sea of mathematics. Unbeknownst to him, number 1 middle school's forum continued to ferment. With such an arrogant ID, he inexplicably became the new internet grass and new Prince Charming. End of August. Song Yu was about to start school. Grandmother Meng asked Meng Guang to take him to the mall to buy some clothes. The eyes of the salesgirl in the mall lit up when she saw Song Yu. The young man had a good frame and good looks. He would look good in anything. However, no matter how much she praised, Song Yu only chose 2 sets. High school students took turns to change their uniforms throughout the year. There was no need to buy too many uniforms. Meng Guang stared at him for a long time before he clicked his tongue and said, "If you go to number 1 middle school like this, even if you can't become the school hunk, you can still become the class hunk." The corners of Song Yu's mouth twitched. He said seriously, "No, I want to be a top student." He wanted to get into the top 100 of his grade and wash away the humiliation of 350. Meng Guang laughed uncontrollably. "Oh, I didn't expect you to have such a high level of self-awareness." Song Yu didn't have a high level of self-awareness. He was forced by his father. When he thought about that damned mathematics, he gritted his teeth. On the way home, Meng Guang told him something in the car. Wang Beidan was arrested. Song Yu fastened his seatbelt and was stunned. "What?" Meng Guang smiled lazily at Yang Yang. He was caught doing drugs. There were surveillance cameras and voice recorders. There were witnesses and evidence. I don't know who did this to him. He was directly handed over to the police. Even the Wang family can't protect him. His life is over. TSK, it feels good. Song Yu smiled. He didn't care much about this canon Fodder who didn't exist in the original novel. At night, Song Yu found out that Grandmother Meng had arranged for him to stay in a single room in the teacher's dormitory. He was dumbfounded. "No, Grandma. I want to experience the 4-person dormitory in high school. It's lively. You know what I mean, right?" Grandmother Meng didn't understand. She slowly packed his luggage for him. "It's noisy with 4 people. You won't be able to sleep well." Song Yu, in the end, under his repeated requests, Grandmother Meng didn't send a group of bodyguards to escort him to school. Song Yu and Ma Xiaoding took Uncle Ma's car to number 1 middle school. In the car, Ma Xiaoding was very excited. "Brother Yu, it's very likely that we'll be in the same class." Song Yu was happy to have someone he knew. He smiled. "That's good." Uncle Ma held the steering wheel and nagged. "With your grades, you'll be in the last class at best. Old Madam arranged for you to be in the first class because she wanted to find a partner for young Master. Young Master is in poor health. You have to take care of him in school." Ma Xiaoding patted his chest. "Dad, don't worry. If anyone breaks Brother Yu's wings, I'll destroy his entire heaven." Uncle Ma didn't understand. "What's that? What wings?" Song Yu, Ma Xiaoding was indeed a teenager who didn't belong to the mainstream. As a key high school in the province, Jing City number 1 middle school still occupied a large area in Jing City, where every inch of land was expensive. School started in September. A large banner was hung at the school gate. Luxury cars gathered in front of the school gate and people came and went. The autumn air was refreshing. The fragrance of golden osman thus wafted through the air. Song Yu got out of the car. He was wearing a white t-shirt and black trousers. He looked clean and simple. He immediately attracted a lot of attention. The teenager's skin was so white that it shone in the sun. His hair was soft and light brown. His eyelids were big and his pupils were dark, but his expression was calm. He was the kind of person who looked like a hypocrite at a glance. He looked obedient, but he was actually perverse. The camera flashed twice in their direction, and there was a click sound. Ma Xiaoding turned around and saw 2 female seniors taking pictures of them. They were laughing and whispering to each other while taking pictures. Their eyes were bright. "Whoa, little girls taking pictures secretly." Ma Xiaoding felt a sense of responsibility to protect young Master. He opened his arms very righteously and stood in front of Song Yu. He shouted at them, "What are you taking pictures of? Haven't you seen a handsome guy before?" Song Yu, the 2 girls on the other side quickly put away their phones and stuck out their tongues. His voice was so loud that it attracted everyone's attention at once. Under those gazes, Song Yu couldn't bear it anymore. He grabbed his arm and walked into the school. Ma Xiaoding's knight's mission and Chunibya soul were still burning. Holding the spirit of sacrificing himself to protect Brother Yu, he walked and looked back. "Don't take pictures of my Brother Yu in the future. Take pictures of me if you like. Take pictures of me. Do you understand?" The 2 girls, "Then you're awesome." Song Yu was amused by him. I think you can only live with Sadako for the rest of your life. Ma Xiaoding scratched his head. Huh. After entering the school, there was a boulevard first. Many people rode their bicycles through it. The greenery in number 1 middle school was very good. The teaching buildings were dotted with red walls. Song Yu lived in a quiet corner in the south of the school. They took the elevator to the 4th floor. As soon as they entered, the housekeeper had already cleaned the place. There was a living room, toilet, kitchen, bedroom, everything. Moreover, the lighting here was very good. The view was bright, and there was a small forest outside the window. After turning on the air conditioner, Ma Xiaoding sat on the sofa and bit a washed apple. Brother Yu, let's take a break first. Anyway, we have to go to the classroom at 7. He turned on the TV and changed to a children's channel. He hugged a pillow and watched with relish. Song Yu glanced at him. Don't you want to go to the dormitory first? Ma Xiaoding, no, I prepared it yesterday. I reserved a good seat in advance. He nodded. Song Yu ignored him and went to the bedroom to tidy up, filling the wardrobe. Then, from a pile of tutoring materials, he chose a high school mathematics textbook. He picked up a pen and decided to start his journey of hard work from the first night's self-study session. Grandmother Meng also specially hired a cook for him. Her surname was Bai, and she was very good at cooking. She must have been told in advance what he liked, so she made all the dishes he liked. While eating, Song Yu sent a message to Xie Sui. Where are you sitting? Save me a seat next to you. In order to avoid Wang Xi's harassment, he felt that it would be safer for him to sit next to Xie Sui. Moreover, Xie Sui was a top student. For Song Yu, who urgently needed to improve his grades, it was the best choice. A few minutes later, Xie Sui replied. Okay. Song Yu smiled happily. After Ma Xiaoding ate and drank at Song Yu's place, he felt that his life had sublimated. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, he eagerly carried Song Yu's books and walked to the school building together. They chatted as they walked. Ma Xiaoding, Brother Yu, do you still remember that guy called Zhu Zhixing? That guy is very sinister. After we threatened him at the school gate, he held a grudge and curried favor with the school bully of number 1 middle school during the summer vacation. Yesterday, when I came to occupy his bed, I met him. That guy said some harsh words to me. Whoa, a dog relying on its master's power. I think he doesn't know that I'm here. It's time to change the school bully of number 1 middle school. Song Yu, can you put some effort into your studies? School bully? What idiot. Ma Xiaoding felt wronged. The main thing is that he scolded you. He said that the person who gave his shop a bad review is a good-for-nothing. You have no eyes when you give birth. Song Yu, why do you care about him? He picked up a math tutorial book and pointed at the name Wang Hoxiong on it. This is the man you should remember the most in your 3 years of high school. Ma Xiaoding, as they walked, Ma Xiaoding suddenly thought of something. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. Brother Yu, are you the internet troll who's been very popular on the forum recently? Song Yu's fingers paused and his eyes narrowed. What's popular? Ma Xiaoding felt a chill run down his spine and immediately changed his words. No. The popular national husband. Song Yu stared at him. Take a guess. Ma Xiaoding was halfway there when he finally slapped his head and remembered. Fuck, I changed your name and almost forgot that your online username is that thing. It's you. Brother Yu. The man who dissed the entire forum. Song Yu had already walked far away. Chapter 17. Grade 1 Class 1 was on the 6th floor. When Song Yu and Ma Xiaoding entered, the classroom was already full of people. This class was introduced in gentle control. The students were either top-notch or rich. Many of them had known each other since junior high. They sat together. The girls were dressed up beautifully, and the boys were also dressed in branded clothes. You could tell the difference in class just by looking at their temperament and clothes. Most of the students who got in because of their grades were sitting in the corner. There was a thick stack of books on their desks before school started. They were wearing glasses, and their clothes were clean but plain. They looked a little reserved and awkward. They seemed a little out of place in the lively environment. Ma Xiaoding was very famous in experimental middle school. He was a thorn in the side, and many people knew him. Now that he was following behind a good-looking teenager, the atmosphere in the classroom suddenly became a little subtle. Song Yu looked around and saw the books that Xie Sui told him were there by the window at the back of the classroom. However, he was not there now. Song Yu glanced at him and said, "Sit there. No problem. I'll listen to Brother Yu." Ma Xiaoding was entrusted by his father. Of course, he had to follow Song Yu at all times. Moreover, he quite liked Song Yu. He was born in a better family than the people he had known since he was a child. However, he did not put on airs at all. He was wholeheartedly focused on his studies. He was really a hard-working, rich second-generation heir. He gave Brother Yu a thumbs up. Many girls in the classroom looked over and exchanged glances. They chatted on their cell phones in their girlfriends' group chat. What day is it today? A romantic encounter at the start of school? It's the second one. Oh, let's not beat around the bush. Sister, I want to date him. Which one? Which? One. Two. Me. Both. But, yes. The one in front almost broke my legs when he came in. He wants to be my husband. The one behind is so handsome that I'm blind. He wants to be my best friend. I think it's okay. I'm afraid you're dreaming. Wake up. No matter what, you have to give me a share. No, wait. Handsome number 2 is sitting in a strange position. Wow. He's sitting next to handsome guy number 1. I'm satisfied, sisters. Hee. If I can't get a man, no other woman can either. A handsome guy should be with another handsome guy. Trash for Joshi, get out of the chat group. You're going to be kicked out. Men in real life are so hypocritical. Why don't you love Brother Yu with me? Let's have a one-on-one online romance. You're a scumbag and I'm blind. HH, it's my Brother Yu. Brother Yu, don't, sister. I won't fall for your trick. JPG, scumbag Brother Yu stepped over the Xie Sui's seat and sat by the window. The middle back was against the wall. When he was studying, it was the VIP seat for the bad students. He slept in class and played with his phone during the evening self-study session. The timing was perfect. Ma Xiaoding naturally sat behind him. She was full of curiosity and expectation about the new environment. He even greeted his deskmate warmly, "Hi." The boy with the black-rimmed glasses, fuck, wasn't this the school bully of their experimental high school? The boy's hand that was holding the thermos trembled. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Ma. Brother Ma, hello. Ma Xiaoding was overjoyed. He just wanted to build a good relationship with his deskmate. No. Good brother, don't stand on ceremony. Just call me Xiaoding. The boy said bitterly, "Hello, Brother Ma." After Song Yu sat down, his mood was very calm. His mind was filled with the promise of the monthly exam. No matter how messy the surroundings were, it couldn't disturb his study. He took out his papers and pen and continued to fight with the two brothers, Sin, Koso, Tan, and Kot. For a moment, the classroom suddenly fell silent for a few seconds. It was because of the beautiful boy who was sitting by the window and writing at a fast speed during the first evening self-study session. The light flowed on his face, bringing with it a gentle halo like a filter. Xie Sui came back from the office with a stack of papers. The first thing he saw was Song Yu sitting next to him and quietly doing his homework. His long eyelashes were drooping, and his skin was dazzlingly fair. He was holding a pen and thinking hard. He was so obedient that it made his heart itch. Xie Sui's dark eyes narrowed. In a sense, Song Yu's existence was half the reason why he stayed in Jing City and behaved as a high school student. He crossed his long legs and placed the papers on the table. Song Yu noticed the movement and looked up. "You're finally back." Xie Sui's fingers on the table paused. He smiled faintly. "Yes." Song Yu handed the papers in his hand to him. "Quick, tell me why this angle is 135 degrees. Xie Sui. Thus, as soon as he sat down, Song Yu couldn't wait to drag him into the world of trigonometry. This was a novel experience for young Master Xie, who graduated from a famous school in his previous life and came back to take charge of the Xie group. He silently took the pen under Song Yu's eager gaze. He thought for a while and smiled ambiguously. Song Yu, I haven't lectured anyone like this in a long time. Or rather, he had never lectured anyone like this. Song Yu thought to himself, I understand. I understand your tragic past. But the important thing now was why this angle was equal to 135 degrees. Why don't you take a look at my algorithm first? No matter how I calculate, it's still 45 degrees. As soon as he got close, he smelled an indescribable scent. It was refreshing and clean, like shampoo. Xie Sui took the pen and was stunned. He didn't have any experience in lecturing and could only treat Song Yu as his opponent at the negotiating table. After taking a look at Song Yu's solution process, he felt that this opponent was unprecedentedly difficult to deal with. Did you come up with this formula yourself? What a great idea. Normal people wouldn't dare to think like this. Did you really go to junior high school? The young man's voice was cold and casual, but it pierced his heart like an arrow. Song Yu, fuck. He was no longer the well-behaved and shy young man from Linshui. Xie Sui looked at Song Yu's drooping eyes and obviously dejected expression. He was stunned, adjusted his tone, and said, but it's not all bad. Song Yu's ears twitched. His confidence that had been hit faintly came back to life. Xie Sui said, at least in your solution process, you stepped on all the traps buried in this question. It's quite rare. Song Yu couldn't bear it anymore. He pressed his hand on the table and became furious with the incompetence of a bad student. I just want you to tell me why it's 135 degrees. Just get to the point, okay? Xie Sui's lips curved. He put away his bad taste and took the pen to write 3 lines of formulas on the test paper. That's it, 135 degrees. Song Yu's anger disappeared quickly. He took the test paper quietly and really did the calculation with the data. Ma Xiaoding and Shi Bowen, who were sitting behind them, widened their eyes and almost dropped their jaws. After talking with the former top student of junior high school, Shi Bowen was not so reserved. He asked, does your brother Yu like studying so much? Ma Xiaoding was surprised by the atmosphere between Xie Sui and Song Yu. She was not surprised that Song Yu liked studying. She murmured, yes, Brother Yu is the man who goes to buy teaching materials as soon as he comes to Jing City. Shi Bowen's eyes lit up. Wow. Then Brother Yu must be a top student in a city. Song Yu finally calculated 135 degrees. It was perfect. When he was in a good mood, he heard them talking about him. He turned the pen, turned back and said lightly, what did you say about me? Ma Xiaoding immediately betrayed his deskmate. He said you must be a top student in a city. Song Yu twitched the corners of his mouth. He was ashamed to say that he was a top student with a score of 350. But when he looked at Shi Bowen, the little boy's eyes were shining with admiration. Song Yu clicked his tongue in his heart. Brother Yu, who had never lost to others, took the initiative to answer. Not bad. I didn't get 800 points in the middle school entrance examination. I'm not a top student. Ma Xiaoding, wow. Shi Bowen, wow. Xie Sui raised the corners of her mouth with a faint smile. Not 800 points. Did you get 400 points in the middle school entrance examination, Yu? Shi Bowen's nickname in junior high school was Bookworm. He was born to worship people who were good at studying. He was so excited that his face turned red. Like us, the full score in a city is 850 points, right? Brother Yu, you're so awesome. How much did you miss? More than 780 points. Song Yu coughed. Almost. Don't mention it. It's sad. Ma Xiaoding was also excited. Brother Yu, how much is 700 points? Song Yu, I said it's sad. I don't want to mention it. Almost 800 points. Don't ask. If you ask, it means almost. 400 points is still a little bit. Shi Bowen sighed. He thought that this was really the inner sadness of a top student. He held his face. Brother Yu, you came to Jing City out of nowhere. Are you going to compete for the top 10 in the city? Song Yu was addicted to pretending to be a top student. He leaned back and twirled his pen with a smile. Not just the top 10. I want to get first place. Shi Bowen, wow. Although Ma Xiaoding trusted her young master very much, she still felt that this scene was too embarrassing. She pulled Song Yu's sleeve and whispered, Brother Yu, don't say it so loudly. The first place in the city is right next to you. Song Yu snorted and put away his pen. He turned to Xie Sui and said, I want to get first place in the city. Xie Sui's peach blossom eyes curved. She said gently and elegantly, okay. Song Yu, I'm about to surpass you. Are you afraid? Xie Sui followed his advice and said lightly, yes. Shi Bowen hadn't had time to recover from the shock that the first place in the city was sitting in front of him. He was already shocked by Song Yu's actions. Ma Xiaoding was also shocked. Young master, aren't you a little reckless? While they were shocked speechless. Song Yu was calm and composed. See. I said to work hard. The first place in the city is afraid. What about you? Ma Xiaoding and Shi Bowen couldn't say anything. Yes, yes, yes. As long as you're happy. Also, why did he feel that the relationship between his brother Yu and Xie Sui was very strange? Talking about a topic was like talking about love. Had the innocent straight man's mind become corrupted? Chapter 18. Song Yu's gaze finally fell on the stack of papers in Xie Sui's hands. What's this? Xie Sui smiled. The freshman representative's speech. Song Yu flipped through it and clicked his tongue. This is the treatment of the city's top student. Are you nervous to give a speech in front of an entire grade? What a strange question. Xie Sui had given countless speeches in her previous life, at companies, universities, and science and technology summits. She had faced people of all ages, men and women, successful and ordinary, domestic and foreign, and outside of the industry. How could she have stage fright because of a high school freshman's speech? However, when she heard Song Yu's words, she smiled playfully and lowered her eyes. A little. Song Yu had already forgotten about the humiliation of a 66, Lagrange, and 135 degrees. He was kind and warmly comforted her. Don't be nervous. I'll hire people to support you. 10 yuan for clapping, 50 yuan for shouting, and 100 yuan for sending flowers. I'll reimburse the cost. Bring your friends along and you'll receive benefits. The more people there are, the better the benefits. Ma Xiaoding listened from behind and raised her hand. Brother Yu, are there any extra rewards for acquaintances? Song Yu said indifferently, there are no extra rewards for acquaintances. You're free labor. Ma Xiaoding withdrew her hand, feeling wronged. Shi Bowen laughed out loud. Xie Sui smiled. The classroom was noisy for about half an hour. The class teacher finally arrived. The class teacher of Grade 1 Class 1 was an English teacher. She was a woman with the surname OU. She looked very young and wore high heels and a white spaghetti strap dress. She smelled of high-end perfume as soon as she entered. Song Yu had some impression of this female teacher. In gentle control, Xie Sui had been harassed and abused in high school. She was more or less responsible for half of the harassment. She was vain and snobbish. In her heart, a student's family background was the most important, followed by their grades. If you had no background and no grades, she wouldn't even look at you. Miss OU walked up to the podium in her high heels with a list in her hand. She casually ordered 2 thin and small boys sitting in the front row. Her voice was gentle and soft. Go and get the student handbook. The 2 boys stood up uneasily and answered in a panic, okay. Teacher OU flipped her long hair and smiled at the students. Hello, everyone. I'm your class teacher for 3 years. My surname is OU, and my name is OU Elian. You can call me Teacher OU. Then, she introduced her glorious resume, which university she graduated from, how many years she had studied abroad, and how many outstanding students she had taught. She even deliberately pinched her throat, which could be said to be very hypnotic. Song Yu only felt sleepy after listening to her talk. He opened the window a little and let the cool night breeze of Jing City blow in. He rubbed his eyes and nudged Xie Sui with his elbow. Wake me up after she's done bragging. I'm going to take a nap. Xie Sui looked at him seriously. Are you sleeping in the first class? Song Yu said in a low voice, there's no need to listen to her nonsense. The first evening self-study session was spent in Ou Elian's narcissistic speech. As soon as the bell rang, teacher Ou stopped her NTH student's speech about how successful and thankful he would be after many years. Standing on the podium, she cleared her throat and said, for the first month, I won't be arranging the seats. You can sit with whoever you want. I'll arrange it when the results of the next monthly exam come out. Well, class is over. Let's have a rest. She did a good thing. She let him choose his deskmate. In this class, Song Yu had a bad dream. The picture was grotesque, but cold and bloody. There was a nameless island, lonely and gloomy like a cage. Then, there was an endless blue sky and sea. A man was leaning against a yacht. His windbreaker fluttered like a white gull flapping its wings. The wet and salty wind brushed the messy black hair on his forehead. His deep peach blossom eyes were cold and indifferent. There seemed to be someone on the yacht in a hurry to get out. The man was holding a gun in his hand and looked careless. Then the glass was broken and the center was dirty. There were gunshots, the sea breeze, and shouts. Blood, wind, and incredulous eyes. The picture froze on the man's bored and disgusted smile. He turned around and jumped into the sea. His back was elegant and neat. Song Yu woke up with a start. After class, the first class was noisy and lively. The girls were laughing and chatting, and the boys were playing games. Behind them, Ma Xiaoding volunteered to explain the topic to Shi Bowen. Oh, you like to recite poems. I think I've learned this poem before. 10 years of life and death are vast and boundless. If I don't think about it, I'll never forget it. A brocade hat and a marten coat, 1,000 horsemen rolling up a flat hill. Do you hit the mark? Shi Bowen, ? It seems to be okay, but I feel that something is wrong. Did you recite it wrong? Ma Xiaoding, impossible. It rhymes so much. Everyone was talking in human language. Song Yu's confused eyes slowly became clear. The wind outside the window blew in, giving him a sense of reality. He looked down at his hands. His heart was filled with an indescribable depression. What he dreamed of just now should be Xie Sui. In the book, Xie Sui was imprisoned on a deserted island and broke her pride. He saw that the book had already been abandoned. So Xie Sui shot and killed the 3 scumbags. Or rather, this was the result he hoped for. Xie Sui. Song Yu's throat was a little dry. He subconsciously turned his head, only to find that Xie Sui was not in her seat. Ma Xiaoding heard him call for someone and said, Brother Yu, Xie Sui was called to the office. Song Yu nodded. Song Yu lowered his eyes and rubbed his temples. At this moment, a figure suddenly came over. A group of people stood in front of him. Hey, little brother, can I discuss something with you? The person who spoke was a tall and thin boy in a black t-shirt, buzz cut, and 3 rows of ear studs. He was not easy to get along with. He tapped his fingers on the table and smiled evilly. There was no look in his eyes at all. The classroom instantly quieted down. Those who were playing with their phones and chatting involuntarily looked over. Song Yu was like a father to those gangsters on Lianyun Street. How could he be scared by a few high school students? But now he was a little confused by the dream. He lazily lifted his eyelids and said, Speak. The tall and thin boy snorted and said, Brother Ci wants to change seats with you. Do you want to change seats? Brother Ci? Song Yu woke up and opened his eyes. The tall and thin boy smiled ambiguously and said, Do you know the Wang family? The Wang family of Jing City. Brother Ci wants to change seats with you. Song Yu was worried that he could not vent his anger. He also smiled happily. He twirled his pen and said disdainfully, Wang Ci? Who? The tall and thin boy stared at him silently. The people in the first class did not dare to breathe. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pen falling to the ground could be heard. They looked at Song Yu as if he was a martyr. Was this person really stupid or just pretending to be stupid? That was the Wang family, which often appeared in Jing City TV station. It's normal that you don't know him. Now let's get to know each other. On the other side of the classroom, a slightly fat boy stood up and said with a fake smile. He had single eyelids, small eyes, and slightly thick lips. His simple and honest appearance on ordinary people's faces was particularly oily and evil on him. Wang Ci walked out of his seat and went straight to Song Yu. His eyes fell on him like a poisonous snake. "Kid, do me a favor. I want to change seats with you." Wang Ci had hit the muzzle of a gun this time. Coincidentally, Song Yu had such a dream. He gnashed his teeth in anger at the scumbags in gentle control. He smiled and said, "Why should I do you a favor?" Hiss. The whole class gasped. Song Yu was still saying lightly, "Because you have a big face." The whole class are fierce. Wang Ci pulled up the corners of his mouth indifferently. Hei Tong and his group followed Wang Ci's lead. Now that he saw Song Yu's provocation, he immediately fell out with him and slammed the table. "Fuck you. Stop talking nonsense. Do you want to change seats or not?" But before he could do anything, Ma Xiaoding had already stood up and smashed a can on the ground. His voice was louder than his. "Fuck you. Try to speak louder." The originally quiet and oppressive atmosphere of the class instantly became hostile. Hei Tong was stunned. "Ma Xiaoding?" Ma Xiaoding ignored him and stood beside Song Yu. He said fiercely, "Brother, you said he won't change seat. Don't you have ears? Do you want me to chop them off?" Ma Xiaoding had always been a troublemaker and a school bully in junior high school. He had a lot of underlings and fought fiercely. Hei Tong was a little afraid of him, but he didn't want to lose face. He said stiffly, "Did I ask you?" Song Yu was amused by the question. He threw the pen on the table and said, "No, get out." 3 words. His tone was extremely arrogant. Hei Tong was stunned and couldn't make a decision for a while. He looked at Wang Ci and said, "Brother Ci." Wang Ci's small eyes only stared at Song Yu. He stared for a long time and didn't know what to think. Finally, he showed an uncomfortable smile and sat back down without saying anything. The boss left, and the remaining 3 or 4 people didn't stay. Hei Tong also said ruthlessly, "If you provoke our brother Ci, you'll have to bear the consequences in the future." Ma Xiaoding was angry. "Come on. Let's see who will bear the consequences." Hei Tong gritted his teeth but didn't dare to kick him. He turned around and muttered in a low voice, "The dog of the Meng family really thinks he's something." After the atmosphere in the class froze for a short time, someone's cell phone rang and broke the silence. Everyone whispered and gradually calmed down. Ma Xiaoding was disgusted as if he had eaten a fly. "The Wang family of Jing City. What the hell? If brother you didn't want to go to school quietly, he would have used his background to scare this group of frogs at the bottom of the well." He looked at Song Yu nervously. "Brother Yu, that idiot just bumped into you, right?" In his heart, Brother Yu was a porcelain doll that couldn't be touched. Once touched, it would break and need to be protected. Song Yu was too lazy to take this group of people to heart for the time being. "No." Ma Xiaoding was angry. "I'll find a chance to beat up that idiot Jiang Xiu." Jiang Xiu was the name of that Hei Tong. After a while, the second evening self-study session began. Teacher Ou and Xie Sui came in from outside. Song Yu's gaze was fixed on Xie Sui as he walked from the classroom door to his side. His gaze was too bright. It was hard for Xie Sui not to notice. Xie Sui sat down and looked at his little deskmate. He smiled. "What's wrong? Are there any questions you don't understand?" Song Yu retracted his gaze. He wasn't in a good mood. He stammered, "No, I know everything." Xie Sui said, "That's true. After all, you're almost the first place in Future City. Song Yu. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.